You're live, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Council, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of November 14th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Cherry, Councillor Devlin, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. And adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of October 24th. Councillor Devlin, second by Councillor Lucelle, all in favor? Motion's carried, thank you. And the special council meeting minutes of November 9th. Councillor Devlin, seconded by Councillor Cherry, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from the regular council meeting of October 24th? Seeing none, I will go on to the special council meeting of November 9th. Seeing nothing, we're going to move on to item 5A. We have a public hearing, the zoning text, bylaw text amendment 2023-002. Ms. Hartling, you have a presentation for us prior to us beginning?
Yes, Your Worship, I'll just bring up the screen and have a short presentation prior to the public hearing discussion.
Thank you.
Just before I begin, just wanted to make sure you can see the presentation before you.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So before the public hearing opens, I do have a presentation over the file Zone 2023-002. This is a zoning bylaw text amendment to the Comprehensive Development Zone 17. Before I get into the full presentation, I'll go over the background of the property details, the proposal overview, policy direction, staff evaluation, and then the staff recommendation. So just a bit of the background details. It does apply the zoning text amendment to multiple properties. So the subject lands are they're part of a multi-family mixed-use development known as Mackenzie Village, and there's 12 total phases within different sub-areas. You have sub-areas A to F. The lands are accessed off a Nickel Road with internal roadways and green space, and all lands are serviced by community water and community sewer. Phase 1, sub-area D, was the first phase completed, and that's developed with apartment houses. And you'll see on the screen in front of you, you have sub-area A and sub-area B, which are part of phases 1 and 2. These lands are currently developed with the newly built mixed-use buildings, which has commercial uses on the ground floor within 3 of the buildings. And then you have residential short-term apartment units on the upper floors within all 4 buildings. The remaining lands of the subject property are undeveloped, but they're slated for residential construction only. And this is as part of the future Mackenzie Village project. Council did receive a staff report and presentation on October 10th with recommendations, and Council gave the bylaw first reading and then delegated this public hearing. Just a bit of the proposal overview. So as noted, the request is to amend the CD17 zone, specifically to sub-area A and B. This is to amend the neighborhood commercial small service retail shops from a maximum floor area from 200 square meters to 450 square meters. You'll see in the image of the slide there that you have sub-area A and B in red, and this would be to 3 of the buildings for the ground floor commercial. So sub-area A, there's also an amendment for additional permitted uses. This would be for personal service establishments and then a licensee retail store, which is also known as specifically as a liquor store. Sub-area B is the addition of the following permitted uses, which is local convenience store, retail store, which are currently permitted in sub-area A, but the applicant's looking at expanding to sub-area B, and then also the addition of professional service establishments and a liquor store. And then the amendment to all sub-areas is to remove the maximum setback requirement, so not the minimum, but specifically the maximum setback requirement from property lines for principal buildings from the front, interior side, and side street from all sub-areas. This slide just gives you an overview specifically to the floor area increase that's been recommended or been requested from the applicant. They've outlined that some of the future tenants do have concerns with the maximum floor area and require a larger area than the allowable 200 square meters. And they've requested to combine two of the units. So what you see in front of you here are the proposed tenants in these current spaces. Are a proposed restaurant at 277 meters squared, proposed restaurant 330 meters squared, proposed professional services 376 meters squared, which would be a combined architecture office and then the Mackenzie Village showrooms area, and then a proposed grocery store at 310 square meters. So an example of just the taking out a wall between the two units is in front of you. And then there's some site photos showing the newly constructed buildings. The ground floor commercial where you see the brick is building 2, 3, and 4. There's a bit of the staff evaluation. So the 3 buildings in sub-area A and B, these have been constructed as noted, and the allowance for increasing the permitted floor area of a commercial unit up to the 450 square meters. This would not be feasible or be able to apply to every unit in the building. Most of the units are slated for future tenants with a specific request of a few tenants for 450 for those uses noted. But due to the building configuration, most of the units will be under 200 square meters or less. And the increase is looking for allowing for flexibility of some of the future tenants. For the mixed use area, a mixture of commercial units is supported, and the addition of the new use of a liquor store and professional service establishments will provide residents of the neighborhood with a variety of local commercial services. The retail store and convenience store uses, as noted, are already in sub-area A, and this is of building 3 and 4. So the proposal is looking at also allowing these uses to be in building 2 as an option for commercial tenants to have either these uses in sub-area A or sub-area B. And then the maximum setback, as noted in previous council meetings, is not a typical regulatory siting restriction. This is if there is really a set pre-approved phase build-out plan and subdivision plan. Otherwise, without a pre-approved subdivision plan and building plan, you're going to look at getting a variance with every single development going into this, the 13 phases within this development. So staff do highly recommend removing this restriction as we do evaluate the building siting with a form and character development permit for the multi-family uses within this zone. So at time of drafting up this presentation, staff advertised notice of public hearing in the October 26th and November 2nd editions of the Revelstoke Review, and we mailed landowner letters in accordance with the LDLs. And at the date of finalizing the report and presentation, staff received 31 submissions, which were all in support of the bylaw amendment. To date, up until 12 p.m. when we allowed public submissions, we received 54 in support of the bylaw. We received 11 in opposition, and we received 1 submission that was neutral, that didn't have a recommendation on support or opposition, and provided some comments. All the opposition comments were only to the floor area increase and not the other sections of the bylaw amendment that are proposed. So staff, at the conclusion of the public hearing, staff do recommend that council considers the following staff recommendation: that the zoning bylaw amendment 2366 be read a second time, third time, and adopted. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Hartling. I am going to start the public hearing. So I'm going to call to order the public hearing regarding this bylaw. The public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, the public will be allowed to make representations to council, and all persons present who believe their interests are affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given the opportunity to address council and to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Those of you who wish to speak concerning this bylaw should commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. A speakers list has been established. So I ask that you observe the rules. If you have any concerns with the manner in which the hearing is conducted, direct your comments to myself, the chair. Members of council may, if they wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council members today is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone should be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views heard. In consideration of the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review in a binder located here at my desk, or alternatively at the city's website under Find Council Documents and choose today's meeting date. Before we begin, I have the corporate officer confirm that all due process was followed according to the local government act.
All due process was followed, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Floyd. So I have a speakers list. It's been established. Each speaker's initial presentation will be limited to 3 minutes, provided the comments are relevant to the issues at hand and the hearing is not being obstructed. This initial time limit is to allow everyone a fair opportunity to address council, respecting the proposed bylaw amendment. After everyone on the speakers list has spoken once, speakers will be allowed a supplementary 2-minute presentation, which will be limited to additional comments to what was previously presented so that everyone that wishes to speak may. Should you wish to provide council with new comments, raise your hand and I will call upon each of you until all participants have had a chance to speak. In your commentary presentation, please do not repeat the comments made in your initial presentation. After everyone on the speakers list has had the opportunity to speak twice, speakers will be allowed a third 2-minute presentation, which will be limited to additional comments to what was previously presented so that everyone that wishes to speak may. Should you wish to provide council with new comments, raise your hand and I will call upon each until all participants have had a chance to speak. So Nick is going to start with the speakers list. So first on the list is Shelley Evans. Shelley's going to speak for David Evans, who is not able to be here today. So Shelley, if you'd come forward, please, to the podium.
Unfortunately, David does have a sick family member in the UK and he gives his regards, and I don't know why, but I'm really nervous, so I'm saying it so that I won't be nervous. And I have medication that's making my mouth all gummy, so I do apologize. But here we go. Dear Mayor and Council, this is from David, by the way. Oh, thank you so much. As the proponent of the bylaw amendment in front of you today, I just want to share a few comments seeking these changes. Before doing that, though, I would like to thank staff for their insight and assistance putting this amendment together, keeping exercise to clean up zoning. 2, homogenizing uses across phase 2 and 3 and adding some uses that were not included previously, such as liquor store, as well as personal and professional establishments. This will provide a much better experience as we won't have one type of store in one building and not in the other. Also, should we have more vacancies in one building versus another, we will not be restricted to that particular building restriction. Number 3, increasing the maximum size from 200 square meters to 450 square meters. This request is driven by our potential tenants, primarily from restaurants and grocery operators who give a large portion, 30 to 40% of their overall space to kitchens, a washroom, and or storage. So if restricted to 200 square meters, they may only have 120 square meters left to service their customers, making their investment difficult before they even get going. Surety on the ability to increase space by combining 2 units gives all businesses at Mackenzie Village the opportunity to grow if their business needs to. This request is not limited to the 4 larger units as shown, but for all spaces. So if that a daycare wants to expand in the coming years and the space next door becomes available, they could proceed without the risk of seeking a further rezoning application at the time and the time that would take and the uncertainty it creates to their business in the meantime. This application, we are here today, was started in February of this year. Initially should have been at council in June, but missed the date. Then the APC did not sit from early July until September. So by the time our application had gone through that process, the earliest we got to council was October 10th for the first reading. With the further request for a public hearing, we are here today on November 14th. 9 months after submitting our application, we are not passing blame on this timeline, just pointing to council with the best will in the world. This is the timeline involved. And this timeline would be a significant barrier to the growth for any business. There are many examples of this downtown that we do not seem to have an issue to, that does not seem to be an issue. So we're simply asking to be treated similarly. Skookum currently operates over 3 retail spaces after starting 1. Universal Footwear, which is great. Universal Footwear is expanding into the unit next door just vacated by Dapsies. Valhalla Pure and The Florist used to be one large store where the Pharmasave was there before being relocated to Victoria, and now they're 2. Terra Firma and the Axe Throwing were 1 combined, and now they're 2. And of course, Revy Outdoors and Conversation was 1 large space serving coffee and selling antiques. I was done. Whoop, whoop. So it was just thank you for your consideration, and that we just want to be treated like anybody else.
Okay, before you leave, Shelley, I'm just gonna ask, any councilors have any question, Ms. Evans, before she leaves the podium? Saying none, thanks, Shelley.
Thank you.
All right, second speaker, David Arnott. David, could you give us your civic address as well?
Yeah, Arbutus Drive, 1007 Arbutus Drive.
Thank you.
Ready? Hey, I'm David from Stark Architecture. I'm part of the architecture team from Mackenzie Village. I just wanted to reiterate the 3 main points that we have here again. From more of a technical nature, the setbacks, clearly having maximum setbacks across all sub areas is a problem. CD17 is the only zone in Revelstoke which makes mention of maximum setbacks. I've never seen it in any other municipalities. There seems to be no benefit or reason why you'd want a building to be placed closer to a property line in a residential neighborhood. If anything, you tend to encourage buildings to be set back further from the property lines. Removing maximums will remove the need for city staff to review development variance requests for the remainder of the 12 phases of Mackenzie Village. The permitted commercial uses. To have these similar uses in all 3 buildings, during the creation of CD17 in 2016, commercial unit uses were assigned in a kind of awkward manner, which resulted in one side of the development allowing restaurants, bars, retail, while the other side was very much limited to dog daycare, retail, things like this. Previous councils have pushed to remove commercial area under Building 1 already, removing approximately 8,000 square foot of commercial space from Mackenzie Village. So updating and equalising the permitted uses between the commercial space already built allows a greater mix of uses and opportunities for businesses to select their space within the space remaining. Allowing the units to be combined, to allow businesses, entrepreneurs, and expanding existing tenants the ability to utilize more space for their businesses. I did want to clarify the Revelstoke Review inaccurate reporting yesterday. They quoted to allow the development to more than double the square footage. That's false. There is 34,000 square foot of commercial space at Mackenzie Village, and that is all there ever will be. It is built, and no more can be built in any of the future phases, despite there being 1,200 units potentially there in the future. Currently, the CD17 zoning places restriction on these commercial units. Ostensibly, this is to restrict businesses to smaller local retail, but in practice, the tenants and entrepreneurs seeking spaces need to grow in spaces to place their business uses, similar to what Shelley was saying. The residents developers do not wish stores that are not in keeping with their neighborhood commercials, so that is why we are willing to impose a restriction on the size, despite them being, but still allow them to be a double unit. This can't be done through a variance. It's hard coded into the zone, so a text amendment has to be used. Similar comments as before, it's unmanageable for businesses to do this on an as and when it's needed, as it takes better part of a year to get here. So in summary, we just want to allow flexibility, cater to growing and successful businesses and entrepreneurs, and reduce the ongoing burden on our city staff. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Any comments or questions for Mr. Arnott? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Stephen Cross.
Mayor and Council, Stephen Cross, 1550 Trail Road in Revelstoke, also the owner of Revy Outdoors, now 10 years old. My comments today, I was on council in 2019 when we approved the current situation for retail and shopping up at Mackenzie Village. And those numbers, up to 2,100 square feet per store and 34,000 square feet in total, were carefully thought out by planning. And that number of 2,100 square feet is pretty much a similar size to many of the shops downtown. Even Skookum, with now 3 bays, is not 4,800 square feet. So the size, this is about size, pure and simple. Just going to pull up my notes here, guys. What you're being asked today is to approve a size which is predatory, not complementary to downtown. And our OCP, which you folks, this council, brought in with great fanfare and great pride after 2 years of deliberations with the community, clearly states that any other commercial center should be complementary to the downtown core. So I'm not sure how stores that are mostly double the size of anybody downtown is complementary. To me, that's predatory. The other point I'd like to make is if you say yes to this, it can't be undone. And I do think that we could use things like daycare, and I get that that may need more space. So you do have the right as council to approve a bigger size for specific uses. And I would encourage you to consider that strongly, because that would be a benefit to the community. But creating a second commercial hub, 34,000 square feet is already larger than Alpine Mall, just to put that in perspective. The only stores I can think of in town that are as big as 450 square meters are Save On Foods, PharmaSave, City Furniture, possibly Red Apple. That's about it, as far as I can think of. This is a huge size, and in retail, size matters. And this is on the direct road to the ski resort. If anybody has the right to build a village, it's RMR, and they have not done so, nor do they appear to be doing so. They are playing nicely in the sandbox, and they understand that downtown is a treasure that people come to. It's a huge tourism asset. And I think, you know, it's hard to imagine what could happen down the road, but yeah, 5 years goes by, and guess what? We've got brand shops or bigger entities in those bigger spaces, and then you've got really difficult competition for the folks downtown. It's a risk you really don't have to take. The developer already has the right to build 14 stores of a size that's already approved. There's no way they need larger. And restaurants downtown, they aren't that big either. So this just doesn't make sense to me to give that kind of approval and create a third commercial zone. Thank you.
Good. Stephen, before you go, any questions for Mr. Cross? Councilor Chair.
Thanks, Your Worship. To the Chair, to Cross. Would you be in favor, you did mention specific sizes for specific uses. Would you be in favor of restaurants that were of that size if it wasn't a retail shop? Or just specifically retail shops that?
Yeah, in my heart of hearts, I would say no, because again, most of the restaurants downtown struggle and deal with a size smaller than that. Could Emos be bigger? Probably. That's its size, but most of the restaurants are just not that big, and they all struggle with the same constraints on seating capacity, turns. The biggest thing for restaurants in this town is getting enough turns. It just, to me, it creates unfair competition systemically, which I don't think is in line with what the OCP's intent is.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Joanne Galver. Joanne, if you could give us your civic address.
Joanne Galler, 310 3rd Street East. I'm here to express my support for the proposed zoning changes at Mackenzie Village, specifically to accommodate the urgent need for additional childcare spaces in our community. As you're aware, the demand for quality childcare services in Revelstoke has been steadily increasing, and the current capacity is insufficient to meet the needs of our growing population. The proposed expansion at Mackenzie Village represents a crucial step in addressing this issue, providing families with a reliable and convenient option for childcare. Moreover, I would like to highlight the commendable efforts of Shelley and David in fostering a sense of community within the Mackenzie Village. Their commitment to creating a space that complements the downtown core is not only beneficial for the residents of Mackenzie Village, but also contributes positively to the entire Revelstoke community. I'm aware of concerns raised by some council members, particularly regarding the methods of communication employed. It is my sincere hope that the council can engage in open and constructive conversations with all stakeholders involved. It is essential to foster an environment where concerns are addressed through dialogue rather than resorting to scare tactics, as this approach can be detrimental to the overall community spirit. I encourage the City Council to carefully consider the benefits of allowing the expansion of Mackenzie Village for childcare service and other much-needed services in our town. This initiative aligns with the growing needs of our community and supports the development of a more inclusive and family-friendly environment. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. I trust that Revelstoke City Council will make decisions that prioritize the well-being of our community and its residents.
Thank you, Joanne. Any questions from council for Joanne? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mark McKee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, Mark McKee, 413 2nd Street West. I thought I would come down as I think that I have a unique perspective on on Mackenzie Village, on the resort. Some of you remember the Highway Mall, and these all kind of have some parallels that I think are worthwhile talking about. But when somebody comes and asks for an amendment, a variance, a text amendment, whatever it is, I guess the first thing I think about was, what was the intent at the start that everybody agreed to and signed off on? And the intent, which was 7,000 square feet of retail, a commercial space up at Mackenzie Village. That was what started. And the intent was, we didn't want people making trips downtown for a jug of milk or a loaf of bread or a bottle of wine, and those services should be available to those people on location. So having a diversified small retail up there to service those people, that was the intent. And the developer has that right to and say, well, in hindsight, 7,000 wasn't big enough. We want 40,000 or 50,000 or 60,000 or whatever that application came to the next council that I wasn't sitting on. And I guess the number that they arrived at was 34,000. A long way from the original intent. And when I have to talk square feet, sorry, but 2,000 square feet for retail, 2,100, that's a good size store. 5,000 is a really good size store. Is that what the original intent was, to have 5,000 square foot stores up at Mackenzie Village to service that development? And I think that it's pretty obvious that the answer is no, it wasn't the intent. And I'm hoping that when council is thinking about all these things, that it's also taking a bigger approach to the thought process of, well, just down the road at the resort, RMR, they're approved for, and I may have the number wrong, but I'll say 150,000 square feet, because at the time, the premise was we didn't want the resort to be bigger than the community. The difference is the resort's approved for 150,000 square feet, but they earn development rights by development. They put steel on the mountain, they build lifts, they do this, they do that. They earn development rights, just like their bed units. They have 16,600 bed units. They don't get 16,600 bed units for nothing. They have to build a resort. Mackenzie Village can just build whatever commercial that council approves and carry on, have a nice day. That's not the same for the resort. And I think that we have to think about that and put it in perspective. So the developer, in hindsight, says 7,000 square feet is not big enough. So they apply and they get approved for bigger.
So Mr. McKee will get you to come back secondary because you've gone over your 3 minutes.
I have never said that to anybody all the time I was sitting here.
Thank you.
All right, Richard Tucker.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council and members of the audience. Thanks for the opportunity to come and speak at the hearing today. My name is Richard Tucker. Lived in Revelstoke for about 10 years. I live at 1701 Corsier Avenue, right above the units we're talking about, on the second floor, in fact. I purchased the Mackenzie Village due to the commitment of a walkable neighborhood. I fully support the consolidation of these units to support healthy businesses. There's no business that rents more space than they need. They only rent what they need and what they ask for. I recognize that in the past, these units were set in a certain size, but with actual applications and actual businesses coming forward, they've requested larger units in certain cases, not all cases, just in a few cases. The proposed business are real businesses. Again, they have specific economic requirements. These are new businesses to Revelstoke. They would not locate in the downtown. There's no opportunity to locate in the downtown. So, and if they want to be, it's not that if this is denied, these businesses will reappear elsewhere in Revelstoke. They just won't be coming to Revelstoke to help, diversify the services and opportunities that are available to the residents of Revelstoke. The units are constructed. Nobody's expanding the space. I read an article in the paper that suggested there was an expansion of commercial space. No such thing. The units are there. They're built. They are the size they are. They will never be any bigger, right? The OCP is, that was passed last year by council and staff after a lot of work and a lot of participation by everybody in the city. There's section 331 talks about sustainable economic development policies. 451, which is the Arrow Height Neighborhood Policy, talks about providing a diversity of mixed-use residential and local commercial uses in the neighborhood. And then the concern about the impact on the downtown, which, while understandable, and certainly nobody, I think, in town wants to compromise the downtown in any way, I think you have to look at the numbers. I mean, first of all, I've heard various people mention that big box stores would be a possibility. They are not a possibility. They would never fit in Mackenzie Village. It's not a possibility, not happening, okay? So when we look at the downtown, what does the downtown have? Fantastic ambience. It has great historic buildings. It has Grizzly Plaza, Farmers Market, music events, seasonal decorations, and there's a huge depth and diversity. There's some just over 600,000 square feet of commercial space in the downtown on the ground floor. Mackenzie Village is 5% of that in aggregate. So I'm not sure how it would be a challenge to the downtown. Personally, I live in Mackenzie Village. I know I'll be coming downtown. Certainly, why would I not? But by the same token, if we're looking for a walkable, diverse neighborhood, this is the way to get there. Dark units are not going to help anybody. They're not going to help the city. They're not going to help the residents. So we're just trying to get economically viable space. And one final thought is, when I was thinking about this a little bit, I was thinking of all the magnificent trees that surround us here in this city. And, I think about the trunk of the tree as analogous to the downtown. It's really important. It supports everything, makes everything happen. But on the same token, the branches need to be healthy for the core to survive and to grow. Thank you very much. Are there any questions anybody might have?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Lafreniere.
Hey everybody, I'm David Lafreniere. I'm at 215 6th Street East. My mouth is dry and I'm not on medication. I mean, I know everybody in this room for the most part really well. I don't like to get involved in public issues. I spent the last week losing sleep, talking to everybody. I spoke to David. I know Shelley. They're good people. They have no evil intent. I don't want anybody to get out their pitchforks. My bigger concern is what I view as opening the door, cracking open the issues and slowly destabilizing things downtown. I mean, it's no secret that the majority of the Mackenzie Village development is vacation and temporary rentals, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not here to say, well, what happened to the affordable housing or where's the Treehouse Hotel? I mean, my bigger concern is these are large spaces. Nobody's mentioned big box. We're more, I think the actual concern is, you know, larger brand retailer chains like that could move in, that can afford larger spaces, and they have deep pockets and they're right in the eye shot. I mean, I think Mark, you know, alluding to the fact that the Mackenzie Village has these rights, and or not Mackenzie, I'm sorry, the resort has these rights and has chose not to exercise them is a really valid point. And I feel like approving something that kind of opens Pandora's box is not necessarily a great thing. I'm in total support of daycare, larger spaces for it. Who doesn't love children? We all want that, but it doesn't need to be a blanket across the board. You know, getting up and getting a croissant and you know, having a place to get like a drink or buy like some simple basic staples and groceries, it's already there in place. What happens if there's not a doom and gloom. I think we all deep down know that there's going to be no problem renting these retail spaces, but it's our job not to pander to the want of individual businesses. And the same as in the downtown. If somebody asks for something that's unreasonable, we say no. It's to curate things for the health of the community. And there's no going back once we make these changes. And it might end up that it's like a bunch of smaller, wonderful little boutique businesses and everything is great. But it's not about that possibility. All we can do is direct things towards what we feel might be the harmful outcome. The same way we do in life. You know, we choose not to speed at 150 miles an hour, even though the roads are clean, because we'll probably be okay. I mean, I don't feel it's in support of the small community that we have.
Thank you. Before you go, David, any questions for Pivot? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it. Dave Hart? Doug? Okay, sorry.
That's my printing, sorry. Good afternoon, council members. So I don't have a lot of facts and figures like the last few speakers. Mine's more of a personal opinion. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm not a full-time Revelstoke person. I work here, contract work. So I'm actually residing at 3470 Airport Way, but I actually live in Naramata, Penticton area. The reason we wanted to approach and approve or put our support behind this, we bought up here in 2016 at Mackenzie Village 1 because we actually were met and we resided in Whistler for a few years. So we wanted to have something like that in a place that we could retire. No offense to Whistler, but it got too expensive. So we wanted to come to a small town again. So for our retirement, we chose Revelstoke. A lot of it was for the village atmosphere that we wanted to see coming at the mountain. It hasn't come yet. Maybe it will in the next few years, but regardless, we did live in the unit for a little while. We actually did rent it out for a number of years before we had to sell. The reason we purchased again in the next phase here is because my wife does not drive. She's actually legally blind, but she low vision, and she wanted someplace new that she could actually stay at, not worry about driving downtown, etc. So when we saw the retail space come up for this phase 2, phase 3, we were excited about purchasing in the phase 4 area. As a future resident, full-time resident, we do want to have that capability, or she does for sure, of a local grocery store, restaurant. We know the other establishments that have been mentioned here today, but the main part of buying again is to have that small town feel which we will have at Mackenzie Village and at the resort, hopefully in the future, but also this part of downtown. We see all of that combining together. I don't see why there isn't enough retail space, but there is not as of this date. We see now, as of today, a lot of growth happening in town, and I don't know if that will ever stop. It should increase over the next few years. And we think that even allowing these spaces to double in size is not going to be a deterrent to downtown. The downtown is beautiful and will always have that small town feel. Thank you.
Any questions, Council? So thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Shelley Evans. You're coming to speak on behalf of yourself.
That sounds weird, yeah. So I'm Shelley Evans, and with my husband David, I am actually very proud to say that we are the developers of Mackenzie Village. David and I love this community, and we're humbled by the positive response to our proposed changes. I have decided to read some of the feedback today. Louisa Corton, her husband, and 3 children have been owners of Mackenzie Village since 2018. Her 3 children went to school here, graduated, and are now in university. She says, we feel very strongly if a business requires more space, there should not be any obstacles put in front of them to do so. Brady Blake says, I was born and raised in this town, and I've recently purchased my first home, which we completed in 2025. I'm thrilled to be a part of this thriving condo complex. I grew up just down the street from the elementary school, and the lack of options for myself and my immediate neighbors forced us to go downtown, which is frustrating. Greater competition in business is a good thing, and if anything, will provide more alternatives for other people's needs. Nancy Jensen has lived in Revelstoke for 34 years, and in part says, I have been witness to the positive and the negative impacts of the expansion of the ski hill to our community. I'm a widow of 12 years, and I've recently purchased a condo in Mackenzie Village for my future retirement years. Revelstoke has few options for seniors wanting to retire to to downsize and live out their retirement years in Revelstoke. I've witnessed a number of friends and acquaintances, I'm losing myself, to retire to other communities because they had more choices and better choices. Reading about the long-term plans for Mackenzie Village sparked my interest. Upon further investigation, I love the idea of a village with neighbors of all ages and amenities within the village to easily access. As for increasing the space limit, I do not have a problem with that. We also received many emails of support from our tenants of Mackenzie Village. Some of those tenants are born and raised in Revelstoke and are grateful to have the opportunity, as there is zero opportunity in the downtown core. For most of them, the thought of expanding, just the thought, is always on the radar, and as already explained, is a time-consuming and an expensive process. We received 8 emails of support from commercial building owners in the downtown core. These 8 individuals own some of the best commercial real estate on First Street, Mackenzie, and 2nd Street. We also received letters of support from businesses that lease their business as well. We also received a letter of support from Stoke Living, one could say a competitor of ours. However, this is a great analogy for David and I. We are super supportive of all of the development that is going on in Revelstoke over the last few years, because it gives our residents opportunities to purchase other property. It doesn't take away from what we do, it just gives more choices for people. Steve Cross sent 2 really scary emails that took 5 pages for me to print out to over 40 businesses in the downtown core. The subject line was follow up to the issues to the threat of downtown. Some of his comments were, my hope is that we can pack the chamber and have a line out the door and down the street. I'm closing my store so all my staff can attend. Okay, but what we don't see is a lineup of people that are upset. And in summary, I did want to thank everybody. And the last thing I will say, and I might come and speak again, if you would like to know who is up there, who are our tenants, who do we have, I'd be more than happy to quickly go through the 4 buildings because we're almost full anyway. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Shelley?
Worship, a question for you. Will we have the event, an opportunity to recall some of the speakers?
Yes.
For
So
questions?
we're gonna go through all of the speakers 3 times, allow them to come forward, and you'll be able to ask them questions.
Thanks.
Okay,
Go ahead. Thank you, Shelley.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Stephen Wayne.
Thank you.
Yes, Stephen.
This is not my presentation. Don't worry.
Hard to get through in 3 minutes.
Council, yes, and the audience here this evening or afternoon. Stephen Hui, 1183 Nickel Road. Business owner for 30 years. I own 2 commercial properties downtown. I'm a landlord, 2 really good tenants, Ramon and Stacy at the stationery store. I believe I'm a good landlord. I'm sensitive to everything that occurs within their businesses, and given with COVID, there's some give and take, of course. Raymond, you're supposed to say you're the best right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyways, I had the privilege of speaking actually to David Evans over the weekend. He put out a mass email saying that he would offer himself. I took opportunity, had a 15-minute talk. Thank you, Shelley and David, for offering. I think there was a lot of information that I derived. So I want to put my spin, or my perspective on it. So that number of 35,000 square feet, it was 30, 34, 35, it's 34, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we go out to, the maximum is probably about 7 large units, if you just did 450 square meters. If you did just the minimum, 200 square meters, it's 16 units. There's 19 there, so some are pretty big and some are pretty small. There's 19 is what I count on there. Got 68 parking spots, and there's 21, I believe it is, on Corsi as overflow. They based it on Village, Upland Village. Not sure if that's the best one to compare to in terms of how much parking you have. I think I'm going to buy a Tesla so I can shop and save on. It's the only way I can get a parking spot, it seems these days. The other thing that I want to maybe comment is that they're wanting a overall for the areas, for CD17. That's basically saying we're not interested in 2 or 3, but we want, full flexibility. They're in the business of developing. They sell condos. They're going to be landlords. They want to make sure that their tenants are happy. So if they can have 2 restaurants, 2 cafes, a bakery, a professional store, they want to have a good mix. I get it. Where you probably will just have to be very, very careful is that, the precedents that it does set. And I said, David, it says, are you selling any of these? He goes, no, Shelley and I are going to own them. I'm going to manage them. I says, so you have total control with that. And she said, yeah. David said, yeah, we want to make sure that everybody is looked after, it's on our best interests. I like that. As long as David's always there. So when he's not there, all he's got left is the papers, the bylaws. So.
Thanks, Stephen.
Just a quick question, Worship.
Okay, sorry, Stephen, yes.
Come on back.
Council Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify if you're for or against.
Oh, I'm opposed.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just a double check.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask if there's anyone in the gallery that hasn't spoken that would like to speak. If you'd come to the podium, please give us the benefit of your name and civic address.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Glenn Westrop, 1736 Hay Road, Arrow Heights. I've lived up in Upper Arrow Heights for 13 years, 9 years as an owner, and originally I was opposed to the initial development, but what I think has happened over the last couple of years with the last stage of the development, it's totally changed a lot of people's opinions of what's happening in the area. They can see it's a quality product that they've built, and I appreciate that. And I think everyone that lives in Upper Arrow Heights has had to put up with a lot, right? We've had construction, we've had flagmen there for years, 4 years probably, roundabouts, you name it, we've gone through a lot. And the benefit that the local community of Arrow Heights will receive is a really nice community shopping centre with a variety of different retail and childcare and restaurant options. Now, if you're a retailer and you're looking at a shop space, you do your figures and you work out what is going to be an opportunity that's going to allow the retailer to make a profit. And if they can't walk into a shop size that offers them that opportunity, they're not going to take the space. There's no spaces available downtown, so they're not going to come to town. So Revelstoke misses out. I've seen this happen before in this town. It's a disappointment. I think the community of Arrow Heights and Revelstoke really deserve the opportunity to have a good mix of retail. It's great downtown, but I can't see any areas where there's going to be a larger retail development in the near future. I think a level playing field is really important when it comes to how people are treated. And I think that's all the Evanses are asking for, is the opportunity for retailers to come in of a high quality and offer a service that we want and people in Arrow Heights generally want. And remembering this area is becoming a high density area between the resort and Upper Arrow Heights. The density area here is a lot higher than probably most parts downtown. We require the services in that area. If I want to go and get eggs, I don't want to have to go downtown to buy a dozen eggs. I want to go to the corner, but I do not want to pay $10 for my eggs because they're aimed at a small group of people at the resort that are just tourists and don't care what they pay. I want to pay the same as I pay downtown. So I think this type of retail will offer that opportunity, and I'm in support of the changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Westrope? Seeing none, thank you. I'll call again. Is there anyone from the gallery that would like to come forward, please?
There is a hand up.
Yep, come on forward. Sorry, I can't see you with the TV. Oh, hi, Pat. Okay.
Hi, my name is Pat McKee. I've lived in Revelstoke since 1976. I've seen a lot of changes. I would like you to consider that when we have larger businesses, and nobody's saying exactly who these businesses are or where they're from, or what context. I would like you to consider that when you have larger businesses and you have 2 or 3 larger businesses, what you're doing is you're discounting the opportunity for somebody who wants to start a business, maybe somebody who lives in Revelstoke. I don't know if anybody remembers, but Mark and I used to own Style Trend when it was in Alpine Village Shopping Center. It was not as big as this. And then we expanded downtown. So if anybody wants to start their own little business, how are they going to do that when the space is all taken up by larger businesses? We don't know what those businesses are. I also find it interesting that Shelley Evans has come up twice to give an opinion for her husband, to give an opinion for herself, and to give an opinion for maybe 10 other people who didn't come to this meeting. I was at a dinner party at Peter Bernanke's house, and that's when I first met David and Shelley. Shelley Evans told me a horrible story about being up at the ski hill with David Battersby, who's a well-known architect in Vancouver. They were seated and they wanted something to eat. It was 9 o'clock in the evening and they were not served anything to eat at that time. This is early days of the ski hill. So you came downtown to look for a place to eat and nothing was open. And I said, gee, that's strange. Usually Emos is open, Sailors is open, maybe if the kitchen's still open at the Regent. So I said, well, what day of the week was it? And I said, was it Sunday? And she said, no. And I said, well, I wonder why that would be. I said, why was nothing open? And she told me, well, it was Christmas Eve. And I said, well, Christmas Eve, a lot of the restaurants aren't open because they're mom and pop restaurants. And in the case of a lot of them, you know, I know a lot of restaurants owners at that time that were Catholic, and Christmas is pretty important. And for all of them, family's pretty important. And I know that Mike and Janice from Zilla's, Christmas is the only day of the year they got off. So I said to Shelley, I said, that's why I got it. Now I know why. And she said, yep, and we're gonna change that. And that's why I'd like you to give smaller business a chance. If Shelley says she's gonna change it, change Revelstoke, coming from Whistler, she will. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else in the gallery that would like to speak? Seeing none, I am going to go back to the top of my list. So Shelley Evans, do you need to speak again from David's perspective, or you've given the benefit of his thoughts?
I believe I've given him the benefit of his thoughts. If anything technical comes up, then I would ask that David Arnott would speak to that.
Okay. David Arnott, do you want to speak a second time? No? All right. Stephen Cross, would you like to speak a second time?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. I take a position on things, but I listen really well. And what I heard everybody who was for this motion say today is they want to support walkability, convenience, and so forth, and build a neighborhood sense up there at Mackenzie Village. And guess what? The developer already has the tools to do that. 34,000 square feet with a maximum 2153 per space is at least 15 to 16 stores. To me, that's convenience retail done right. And that's why when I was in council in 2019, I actually supported this motion. Them coming back now and asking for more is predatory. It's not about equality. They paint it as make it a level playing field. It is already with what council voted for in 2019. And I'd encourage you to really think about that. You vote for this today, it can't be undone. It doesn't matter what the promises are today. In a few years, a space could come open and you've got North Face, Arc'teryx, Solomon stores up there who crucify the independents downtown. Arc'teryx has already cut off 1/3 of their dealers. Those business plans for the brands that our outdoor stores depend on, including mine, selfishly speaking, need support. And the big brands are in a concerted effort for the last 10 years to own it soup to nuts. That's what's going on in the outdoor industry. But the other thing that interests me about what I heard is that if you want to support entrepreneurship, you offer smaller spaces. Entrepreneurs, families, guys who have saved up, they can't walk into 4,800 square feet and afford that rent and make that work. The inventory alone. You know, my store, both floors, one's a basement, is 1,900 square feet all in. I carry $1 million in stock at cost. So it's you know, if you really want to support entrepreneurship, leave it the way it is. If you really want to support walkability and convenience and a sense of a village, leave it the way it is. If you want to open the door to potential destruction, then vote yes.
Thank you, Steve. Joanne Goller, do you want to speak again?
Thank you.
Okay. Mark McKee, I'm going to get you to come up again. I don't think you were finished what you were saying, and I have a couple questions that might clarify some things.
I guess I was pretty close to being finished, but if you have questions, but I just wanted to reiterate is what was the intent of the 7,000 square feet? And it was to service the place up there. 34,000 or bigger than 2,000 square feet of retail space. You're actually drawing people in from elsewhere instead of what the original intent was to service the development that is up there. And the world has changed quite a bit since Mackenzie Village was approved. And like I said, I always go back to the 7,000 square feet because, quite frankly, I didn't think that it was going to change, and it did change. But I heard earlier that, well, now it's not gonna change. Well, I didn't think it was gonna change at 7,000 square feet, now it's 34. There's nothing stopping them from changing the development of the existing, of the stuff to come and ask for another 34,000 square feet. That is the problem. The thin edge of the wedge has already started. I think we should just leave it just the way that it is. I have no problem with the daycare thing. I think that it makes a lot of sense, but service the development is what the intent was. There's a backlash around the world over vacation rentals. Hindsight for me, I think that I would really, knowing what I know now, I would really give a lot of thought to vacation rentals, as I'm sure all of you are sitting around the table about what is the future of this community vacation rental, because there's big changes coming around the world with vacation rental, and we're going to be no different. Thank you, Your Worship.
Good, thanks, Mark. So I just want to ask, just for comparison, when you sold Saltran, what was the square footage that you had in that store?
About 2,400 square feet.
2,400. Okay, and I'm doing that just for comparison for our council members. So, good.
5,000 is a big store.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Everything? Anybody else?
Anyone else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Edward. Richard Tucker, do you wish to speak again?
Yeah. Hi, just a couple of clarifications. I think there was a reference to RMR having 150,000 feet. It's actually 415,000 square feet that they're permitted to build based on table 1 in their bylaw. And the only other point is we're not looking for an additional 34,000 square feet. It's not possible. It is what it is. Can't get any bigger. It's not a thin edge of a wedge. It's just trying to respond to realistic commercial demands in the area.
Good.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks. David Lafreniere.
I don't want to, but I will.
Okay.
So, I mean, I feel like people know my store well, so I'll put this in perspective. I'm about 300 square meters. 450 is 1.5 times the size of that. It's a large space. It's not a beginner business. It's not, some guy who's starting like a little boutique bakery or a cafe or whatever else. It's a large space. And like I said, I don't believe there's any ill will. I don't believe anybody wants to hurt the town, but it is a door that we're opening, and we don't know what it will be later on, and we know what it is now, and in rejecting this, you know what you get. If you don't, you really don't. And like I said, I'm not here with my pitchfork like, oh, this is evil. I think Shelley and Dave are good people, but they're developers, and development is driven by market forces, and market forces don't necessarily, their desire doesn't align with the good of a community always. That is just a fact. Sometimes it does, and it's a beautiful thing when it does, when the economics of something align, but it doesn't always. And I mean, I want to bring it back to one of Shelley's comments that I actually found very encouraging. She said that almost all the spaces are rented and they've got tenants. So what is the point of changing it if it's already, their demand is already there? I mean, I think it would be naive to believe that it's a beautiful development right on the foot of one of the best ski hills arguably in the world, that it's going to be lights dark and there's going to be no businesses there, or no one's going to want to take those spots. They will be filled. The question is with what? Will it be a larger chain type store, or will it be a small cafe? Will it be like a small grocery store? Will it be a little liquor store? I don't believe this is like we evil plan or anything. It's just we know what we have now, and we don't know what we could get in the future.
Sure.
And they might not always be in control of it either. Maybe one day they'll sell to less good people.
Good, thank you. Doug Hart, would you like to speak again?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Shelley Evans, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I would. Thank you. So first of all, I do want to say that I really respect Dave and a lot of the people that are here that are speaking. I don't have anything that says against me. I don't have any ill will. I think everyone's entitled to their opinion. I would just like to say that, you know, as far as who is there in the store, if you guys are wanting to hear sort of one of the stories, what the big issue is. And so for right now, I was talking to Heather Hood about a grocery store, local girl. Every single person that we've been talking to have been local people. Heather, for many reasons that I won't say, 7 months we talked, she couldn't go through the grocery store. She contemplated 4,000 square feet. And so right now I've been talking to somebody for 2 months. His name's Mike and Mark. They want to do a grocery store. They're right now, the last 2 months, they've got the lawyers, they're spending money with lawyers, spending money looking at different types of fridges, stuff, everything. It takes a long time. As you guys all know, you're all business owners, I think pretty much in this room. It takes a long time to figure out if you're going to do and write your business plan. Mike has yet to decide whether he's taking 2,000 or 4,000 square feet, because we can't do, and I know there's a lot of talk about this 5,000. I think the 450 square meters is 4,700. We actually can't physically, I think staff alluded to that at the very beginning of this, we can't physically have kind of more than 4,100 or 395 square meters because the store is already built, right? So I'll let staff talk to that. But so for Mike, so he hasn't decided. So if tomorrow, and this is just his problem probably, maybe no one cares, but if he decides tomorrow that he wants to take more space, guess what has to happen? He has to go to staff. Staff has to go and say, yes, we all agree. We want to, maybe this guy is okay. It's not a Patagonia. We want him to have the grocery store. So we want him to have 4,000 square foot. It has to go to staff. Staff then has to go to the APC. What happened with our liquor store this summer? We missed 3 months of the APC taking the time off. Oh, guess what? It's Christmas. Okay, it's January. Right? So Mike tomorrow might want to open a grocery store, but he physically might not be able to do so until July next year. There's no malicious intent in here. It's just the flexibility. I'm not down to no box stores, but again, if you'd like me to come up and I can tell you who's there, I'd be more than happy to do so. Thank you very much.
Very good. Stephen, would you like to speak? Sure.
Thank you once again. So just sort of a couple of comments. I came here 39 years ago, and the community is very, very, I guess it's evolved. And these days, there's a lot of sophistication. I mean, I love the energy, love the people that are coming into town. The idea of having new businesses open up is actually, exciting for me. I think I came down a couple weeks ago, people on the street on a Thursday. Who ever heard of that? And I can see the work maybe of lots of years of people who volunteered, on various committees, whether community enhancement, economic development, and such forth, to bring the community. And then when RMR came along, of course, with the momentum they have, the Ghilardi's, here we are. So I go back to probably 2003 when we're talking about the RMR Master Development Agreement, and the era of discussion was that, we want to be supportive. We want to use Revelstoke as a bit of marketing, a brand. We want to draw people in. Sure, we want to build on the scale here, but first and foremost, and I was on the chamber, and I still remember, sitting, looking at these numbers, and trying to come up with some meaningful number in 2003 before anything was on the Hill. And we come up with something, with earnest, with thoughtfulness, and I really believe that they've played along their part. And they promote Revelstoke. I think they do a good job. Are we pushing that boundary ever so little? So they're watching this, no doubt, very carefully. What is the message that's being sent across? I don't know. This will be probably a discussion, probably downtown Vancouver tomorrow. With probably couple of the head honchos. Doesn't mean that we have to be pushed by one player in the game, but I think we always have to be sensitive to who actually is involved in this. The Evans, of course, the residents, we've heard from them, the business community. I know that uncertainty is scary. And that's what's pushing maybe some of the emotions and some of the opposition maybe along, but you can manage that, I think, not just today, but, for the future as well.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen, Councillor Orlando has a question.
Yeah.
Your Worship, through the chair, Stephen, just for a point of reference, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
PharmaSafe, how many square feet is that?
I started off 8,000 square feet in 2002.
Yeah.
Added on 1,000 square feet in 2005 and 500 square feet probably about 2012.
Okay.
And then they put me on Prozac and I stopped.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Steve. All right, so I'm going to ask if there's anyone in the gallery. I'm calling for the second time for speakers from the gallery. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in the gallery?
Can you speak again?
Yes, yes. Those of you who are on the speakers list, I'm going to do one more time, so a third time. But just those of you who haven't either had a chance to speak. Seeing none, okay. So now I'm going to go back. Shelley, no more comments regarding David?
No, thank you.
All right, David Arnott?
Super. I just wanted to address this was thought about in 2016, this zoning for this square footage. I mean, that was 8 to 10 years ago that was discussed. A lot has changed. I think building that flexibility in means we don't have to come back here constantly to ask for this. It's been really actually quite comforting to hear all these other local businesses here talking about their expansion over the years, being able to flexibly go from the mall to downtown to add on space to expand. They've all been allowed to do that. I think whilst this may seem like you're controlling the maximum size of a large business to go in, you're also punishing a business that may want to expand or organically grow. That's my point.
Great.
Any more questions?
Councillor Devlin has a question.
I did have a question more on the technical side through the chair. So just to clarify, were this to pass, this would not change the fact that it would be 2 units. These would still be 2 separate units that one person was renting. And in the future, as an example, let's say a grocery store went into one of these. If that grocery store were to close down, one person would not be required to rent 2 units. They could conceivably put a wall back up and it would be 2 separate units. Is that correct?
Exactly. All these spaces can be demised much smaller than they are now. It is just the maximum. And as was previously mentioned, the 450 was put in there to kind of give a buffer and allow a bit more flexibility, so we didn't have to come back. The real physical maximum size a double unit can be is approximately 380 square meters. We just didn't want someone to do 381 and we had to come back.
Thank you. Good. Councillor Palmer has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. So my question is, it seems to me that it's the market that's driving a potential need for larger units. Recognizing that my question isn't necessarily prohibit changes in the future, but with the current market, how many units do you expect to be needing this larger? So I think I heard grocery store and childcare facilities. Is there any others, or is it at this point that's where the market is?
Yeah, through the chair, restaurant and kind of professional services. our spaces, we're asking for a little bit more.
So if I may, Mayor Souls?
Yes, you may.
So I'm just talking about the larger units. Is there professional services that are needing that large space as well?
Yeah, yes, one.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. Any other questions, council? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, David. All right. I'm going to ask if there's someone else that would like to speak again. Pat, you want to come up?
I'd just like to clarify that when we moved our business from the mall downtown, it was done because we were not allowed to expand. There was no room in the mall. So what we had to do was, it wasn't that we were allowed to move downtown. We actually had to buy a building downtown. We then had to, the building had no tenant in it at the time and was a bit of a wreck. So then we had to also invest into that building. So that's what businesses do when they want to expand and there's no room, is they find another way. But I just don't like the idea that we were allowed to do it and it just happened. That wasn't the way it was done. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
I'd like to just comment on sort of Pat's theme, is that we were downtown and we had, I think, about 3,000 square feet between two locations. We were pushed to the max. It was 12, 13 years into my business, and the idea was to get more space downtown, and we wanted to buy the building, which is Masonic Lodge, which consisted of the Heather Hut, which was next door. We'd essentially doubled our main floor plus a basement. We negotiated for 2 years, and when it came down to vote, I think it was 20 or 30 active members in town. But as a Mason, I guess you have life privileges. Over 100 people came in from out of town to vote against it. 2 years later, I said, we if we either grow or we, just say, hey, okay, I hadn't been on Prozac at that time, so I said, okay, let's move it. So we bought 125 feet. We're 25 feet short. I went to the Brewskis. I said, Fred, I need another 25 feet. And why do you need 25 feet? Why don't you just make it deeper? Well, I want the frontage. And that's the game. It's the frontage. People drive, they see it, go, okay. I could have put parking on the side, make a narrower building. There's different configurations. So, anyways, yeah. And then when I did add on to my own building, my own property, the other 1,000 square feet used to be actually a coin laundromat. The fellow passed away, and the owner, the wife came to me, offered it to me.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, I will call one last time. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Stephen Cross.
I'm just going to start by pointing out that I think I heard the developer's architect say they don't want to have to come back again. So the intention is to keep coming until they get what they want. I just find that interesting. But since people are telling personal stories, when I came here, I would have loved to have had a bigger store, but there wasn't bigger spaces available. The buildings were smaller. And we got the one we got, Riverview Outdoors, which was fantastic. I went 3 years without a paycheck. Happily, we could do that. I went 2 years with a $20,000 a year paycheck. Flash forward to today, things have changed. The town's growing, our business is growing. I'm getting a decent paycheck, and now I'm on the cusp of being able to pay all my staff a living wage. On the cusp, not quite there yet. Some make it, some don't. The point is, if you open the door to competition that can outsize local people that have spent years building their business, you may deny them the opportunity of sharing in the prosperity that Revelstoke now represents. And I think that would be a travesty. I think that would be an error in judgment and leadership. People deserve to actually finally share in the prosperity of this town. And a lot of people working in the retail shops that have been here for years They're just getting there. And it would be unfair competition is the way I see it. And you know what? What's wrong with 14 to 16, 2,000 square foot shops? What an opportunity for entrepreneurs that live here. Honestly, I mean, that would be a better looking village up there with more diversity than just 4 to 6 professional services, childcare, a big restaurant. What's the village in that? What's the atmosphere in that? I think it's wrong-headed. I think it's the wrong approach. It's easier to deal with 4 or 5 tenants than 14. I'll tell you that. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But it just seems wrong-headed to me. And if we really want to make decisions that ensure everybody shares in the prosperity that's been here for years, I think you say no, except for perhaps childcare. We all know we need that, and I support that. If you want to have all that, any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Cross? Seeing none. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Joanne, you would like to speak again?
Hi again. I just wanted to say, I think it's a really great question that you brought up. Just because they're asking for this amount of space, there's nothing saying that when they want to leave, that wall does go back up. And I think this is a very great thing to think about. As a child care provider and actually an advocate to like start the child care and make it bigger, great. And I also would love to see other companies as well up there do the same thing. And when I'm like, okay, I'm done with kids, I'm out, I'll back up the wall. I'm not going to, don't worry. But I just think this is also a really great angle as well. Shelley just wants to help people. She's helping me, but it's also helping the town to do these sort of things. And yes, I'm an entrepreneur and I did win the business award for that, but I'm just saying there's so many things to think about here. For an entrepreneur to have this ability to have such a large space would not just benefit me, take my ego out of it, and it's benefiting the whole community at large. And yeah, when I'm done, put the wall back up. I love what you had suggested or asked. That's all I have to say.
Councilor Cherry and Councilor
Cherry, you're probably gonna ask the same question.
It's probably gonna be the same question. To the chair, are you one of the business owners that are looking for the larger space?
Potentially. The need for childcare, as we all know, we're in a childcare desert here in Revelstoke. And so currently I'm gonna be open 7 days a week, offering childcare full-time and a drop-in section of it. But there is no childcare for younger than 18 months. So the possibility of actually saying, great, nothing's beside me, take down that wall, add an actual space for children that are under the age of 18 months, would be amazing for this town, for more women to join the workforce. And then if that is actually something that doesn't want to happen in this town, I can put the wall back up and we're good, which is not going to happen for childcare. But also as a restaurant, open that wall and then take it down again. Did you have a question?
Yeah, through the chair. This might be a little early in your discussions, but it is kind of a point of curiosity. Do you happen to know which units you would be looking at as there's no childcare listed on the list?
I'm 4108 Percier Avenue, which is building 4, and I'm one in from the corner unit. So the corner unit there, if it's not going to be a Japanese restaurant or another coffee restaurant or another outdoor store, we could just take down that wall and have even a better section. And open childcare space is way beneficial for the little tiny brains of the children rather than, okay, now you gotta go in this area and this area. If we can open up that wall, it would be even better.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions? Thanks, Joanne. All right, I have called 3 times for speakers. And I will go one more time to just say, is there anyone else that would like to speak before I close this public hearing? Seeing none, there not being any further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions. I'll now call for a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Councillor Devlin, second by Councillor Lucio. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. All right, so staff, we want to have a bit of a conversation. I would like to have a bit of a conversation. So we may be asking questions here at this point in time. So presently, the space is already zoned for 200 square meters, correct?
Through your worship, council, yes, that is correct.
And all the units, whatever, 18, 19, or 200 square meters, and then they have the opportunity of moving them. So if this didn't pass, they can't drop a wall and make two units together to rent out to somebody, is that correct?
To your worship, yes, that is correct.
All right, so any comments from council, any questions from council regarding this before we go any further? Councilor Doucette, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yeah, just a question to staff. So when we have the 450 meters squared, I understand that's there for flexibility. Would that allow somebody to essentially occupy 2.5 units, putting up a wall and having that half unit be part of a secondary unit?
Through your worship, Councilor Lucio, I'll actually defer to Ms. Hartling, who's the file manager for this, so I can answer any questions that Ms. Hartling wants to direct to me, but certainly will.
Ms. Hartling, comment?
Through your worship to councillor, no, it would be 2 units. With the way the building's already constructed, it wouldn't be feasible to split one of the units in half, as the walls are already there's already a place for all the walls, with either the walls up or the walls down where the middle divider is. But the applicant, also the architect, is in the audience if they do want to elaborate on that with the current building, how it's laid out.
Okay, Mr. Arnott, do you want to elaborate regarding how the layout is of the building?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason you can't do more than 2 spaces is because there are things like corridors and fire separation. So the maximum really is 2. That's when but we can remove walls between those 2. We just can't go wider than 2 because of the firewalls, stairwells, elevators, yeah, electrical rooms, if you look at the plan.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
Yes, it does, thank you.
All right. Councilor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Follow up to that question. I think it's been stated, but there's some ambiguity. What is under the current bylaw, what is the maximum number of units, so separate businesses, that could be constructed? So that's the first question. The second question is, with the proposed changes, what would be the potential minimum number of businesses that would be allowed? Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hartling.
Yeah, through your worship, the bylaw doesn't restrict number, but due to the floor area and the buildings already being built, it would be 19 units would be the maximum, and that's laid out on the plans that council has in front of them. For the maximum number that could have the walls removed, I believe it's 5, but I might defer to the architect that's in the room. Just looking at the plans, there's definitely a few units that cannot have a combined wall, as noted, due to fire separation, hallways, corridors. But I have marked down maximum 4 to 5 units, but I'll let the architect also outline if there's any additional units other than those 4 to 5.
Mr. Arnott, comments regarding minimum number of double units?
I think the maximum number of
Pardon me, maximum.
Yes, it's 4 or maybe even 5.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councilor Palmer?
I think so, but I just wanted to clarify. So potentially there could be 4 or maybe 5 would be with no other units at all. So there wouldn't be any half or the single units as currently. So the total number of businesses in Mackenzie Village under the buildings would be 5 businesses with the larger size. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councilor Palmer, the text would say that would be for the neighborhood commercial zone. It would be 5. So currently there's 19 units that can be built. And then if you took away the 5, there'd be 14 total that could be And that would be a mixture of units that are under 200 square meters and then 5 that could be up to it wouldn't be 450. When you look at the layout of the building, the max will be just under 400 square meters.
Through the mayor, so just, I think this is important because I'm trying to understand, and it's a little bit hard for me to state the question, but I think I'm getting a sense. So if they maximize the opportunity of having the larger units, we would still have 14 businesses?
That's correct.
Right. So ultimately the question with the current versus the potential future is 19 businesses versus 14.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council or questions? Councilor Orlando.
Your worship, thank you. Through the chair, I have some questions for staff. First off, seeking a bit of clarity, and I want to thank planning department staff for entertaining my emails with questions regarding how text definitions work. As many people are aware, we kind of have we're halfway through updating a very, very dated zoning bylaw, and that sort of puts us in a bit of a lurch when we approach issues like this because our uses are poorly defined. We have updated them somewhat, but it nevertheless sort of leaves us in no man's land a bit on some of them. So to focus on one that maybe sort of crystallized the angle of several of my questions, regarding licensee retail stores pursuant to the Liquor Control and Licensing Act, we have a definition for a cannabis store in our zoning bylaw. The way these uses definitions work is that a blanket statement use covers everything unless it's specifically otherwise denoted or detailed in some other way as being separate from that general blanket use. So what I mean by that is retail store, for example, covers pretty much everything that's a retail store unless there's some specific definition. Now my question is this: since we are defining cannabis stores in our current iteration of the bylaw, does this allowance for 450 square meter licensee retail store include both a liquor store and a cannabis store, or is it one or the other?
Comment, Ms. Hartley? You're muted.
Through your worship, no, it would not permit a cannabis store.
It would not include a cannabis.
Would not. Okay, so it's not permitted in this zone as well. Okay. Thank you. I do appreciate that comment. A second question related to the Liquor Control and Licensing Act is the province sets regulations regarding areas around individual licensees. There's like a 1 kilometer radius, I believe, and just going off of memory here. So if you've got one here, you can't have one within a certain radius here. I don't know if the act's been updated. My question relates to how this sort of exclusion zone would impact other potential liquor licenses, for example, related to the resort. I know I'm assuming they still have one up there. I don't know if it's actually a kilometer away or if other ones are planned. So would this potentially, if a licensee retail store is added here, and this is not in, as I understand it, the original comprehensive development zone listing, this is a new addition with this variance. Would that potentially prevent the golf course from setting up a liquor store at one of their new locations or some other place out at the resort from having that kind of a license?
Ms. Hartley?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor, no, it wouldn't restrict the resort. That is all through the LCRB though. So they would have to follow the provincial legislation if a new liquor store is permitted, or if it's an existing licensee moving, they would have to meet that provincial regulation. The city zoning would not change that. We do have a liquor licensing policy that council would review with different licensee types that the province refers to us, but we have to receive a referral from the province to then bring to council for new licensees, but it wouldn't restrict where the location of the resort is. It wouldn't restrict it.
And you were supposed to follow up question for staff. Is that because it's more than a kilometer away, or I'm wondering how the exclusion. I'm not talking about the zoning. I'm talking about if a license is approved, that it comes with an exclusion zone, as I understand it. So from there on forward, with an approved license, anybody within that zone would not be allowed to apply a new license. And I guess that what I'm trying to say is it would be a shame if the golf course or some other use within the master development agreement was prohibited from doing it because it was located outside of just adjacent to that in another development.
Through to the councillor, we don't have, well, from the provincial legislation, I'm not aware of any changes. There's not the spacing separation of a liquor store. What you're citing is applicable to a cannabis store for the 100 meters. We don't have that provision for a liquor store with a 100-meter radius. I'm not sure if there's been amendments through the province for that. I know that they've put a moratorium, as previously mentioned by Councillor Staffenhurst, on new liquor stores. However, I'm not aware of the 100-meter for competition-wise for liquor stores. That is for cannabis retail.
Your worship, just for crystal clarity, this is not local bylaws I'm talking about. I'm talking about provincial regulation, and I believe there is an exclusion zone. And am I totally wrong in that I will operate on that there is no exclusion zone under LCRB rules for liquor stores. You can open as many as you want on the same block. Is that correct?
Comment, Mr. Sun?
Through your worship, Councillor Orlando. Staff aren't aware of that clause within the provincial regulations. Generally speaking, in my experience, minimum distance separation between uses is something that's regulated through zoning. And so, for instance, as Ms. Hartling alluded to, for our cannabis retail stores, the city has a local zoning regulation that doesn't permit it within 100 meters of each other, having an effective minimum distance separation. Staff can certainly look into that more through the provincial regulatory process, but it's not something that we've been made aware of in our liquor licensing here at the city.
Thank you.
Go ahead, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I've got a few more. Just another question. I was hoping to, for staff through the chair, I was hoping to get a comment from staff regarding dueling interpretations of the official community plan. Often, it's my feeling, rightly or wrongly, that you can go through the official community plan and find, a blanket general statement that supports many different things, including whether it does support or not support doing this one. So the comments that have been made from some members of the public in the public hearing today has talked about, has focused on clauses that support downtown, and it has specific wording. I'm sure staff read those comments about supporting retail downtown. Staff in their initial presentation said that the zoning, this change, this bylaw amendment was consistent with the official community plan, and also to add a second layer onto that question, there was also comments regarding the history of the current status. There was an application for a much larger retail that was scaled back a few years ago. Again, this is before my time on council. And I'm sort of seeking staff's interpretation of these two sort of movements. One that this was what was supported, the smaller units, and that was thought through, and that there are statements contradicting staff's interpretation of what is and is not supported by the OCP, and I'm just seeking thoughts. Yeah.
Ms. Hartling, do you have comment?
Yes, Your Worship. The comments that have been presented to council through some of the public comments in opposition due to preserving the downtown core, those are the central business district land use policies. So properties within the central business district, we'd be looking at those policies for preserving and maintaining the downtown area with businesses that are looking to expand in the downtown. And it does note that there's any future commercial outside of the downtown would be supportive as if it's complementary in nature. Then you go look at the mixed use land use designation policies of the subject properties, and then the Arrow Heights policies that do support what is being proposed. So it's not just, like you said, it's not just picking and choosing one policy that fits what might be that you're concerned with. It's looking at the entire official community plan bylaw as a whole, and specifically those neighborhood areas and those land use policies that govern and outline how council wants to see those areas evolve. So those were the central business district policies. Staff have outlined the policies in Arrow Heights and the mixed use designation for those properties. Sorry, what was the second question?
The history of the application. So I understand first Mackenzie Village was the retail component of the overall development was subject to an application 3 years ago or something like that, or recently, or I'm sorry, Mr. Cross was the one talking about it, and I'm wondering.
Yeah, looking at the bylaw when the original bylaw was adopted back in 2016, it allowed those floor areas. Staff would have to go through previous reports and if anything ever was presented to council at that time, because when looking at the bylaw and any amendments to the bylaw, that was not the case. The original bylaw allowed for the uses or for the density and sizes that you see today. So I'm unsure where that comment is actually coming from.
Mr. Simon.
To your worship, just to add on and compliment Ms. Hartling's comments there. The original bylaw as adopted by council always permitted 3,000 square meters of commercial floor space and capped it at 200 square meters as a maximum per an individual unit. So the allowances as they sit today have been the allowances since November 2016 when the bylaw was originally adopted to enable the Mackenzie Village development. There has never been an increase to floor area from what was originally approved by council in 2016. So staff have been looking at that kind of in the background of this meeting when those comments were made. And we did go through the previous zoning bylaw before the current one was enacted through repeal and replace in January 2022. And there's been no amendments to the CD17 zone since that time.
All right. Any other comments from other councillors before I go back to Councillor Orlando? Seeing none, Councillor Orlando, I'll come back to you. Further questions?
Yeah, Your Worship, I'll try and wrap two in one here, and this is looking at sort of the Area B and the Area A amendment. Just for clarity, it's my understanding, and again, this is based on correspondence with staff, that because of the challenges with our uses and the definitions, some are defined, some are poorly defined, and that's something we're seeking to address through our ongoing zoning bylaw update. The overarching definitions such as retail store or specifically neighborhood local convenience store or personal services establishments, that these are overarching definitions that apply to anything that may apply or be fall into those definitions, and unless it is otherwise specifically defined otherwise within a definition within the bylaw. And I'm just seeking a confirmation of that understanding, as well as any elaboration that staff would like to offer on that question.
Okay, we'll go to Ms. Hartling first.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Orlando, that is the correct understanding. You'll see in the CD zone that there's specific definitions at the bottom of the CD zone, and then what's not outlined there is within the general definitions that apply to all those uses within other zones. So the retail store is quite broad, which could permit local retail stores that's been discussed today, grocery stores. It's without it being quite specific, whereas a liquor store or a cannabis store have their own definition and they're separated out. But many of the retail stores that have been discussed that may be a large scale, small scale are combined into that retail definition.
Thank you, through the chair. No, I really do appreciate the response.
Okay, any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for some clarification from staff. So what's before us is to amend this bylaw to allow up to 450 square meters per unit. And then we now know that only 5 units can be placed at that at that size. If we were to deny this, then it stays status quo at 200 square meters. And then if we wanted to alter and say we will allow 2 or 3 at the 450 size or 380 or whatever the reality is, we can specify that as well. Is that correct?
Through to your worship, yes, that's correct. If council has recommendations for altering or amending resolutions, staff are happy to bring anything up with what you outline as a, if you all have a requirement or concern with anything that's been proposed with the floor area, say if you're wanting to restrict it to under 450 but above a certain area, or if you're wanting to restrict it to 5 buildings only. If you're looking at if there's concerns with how the retail store is outlined in the bylaw, if you're wanting to allow a larger floor area for certain retail uses and not others, staff are able to quickly amend any resolutions if there is that direction.
So having asked those questions, council, is there any appetite to go one direction or another? So the motion in front of you is to open it up to go to second and third reading and then adoption at 450 square meters. Councillor Palmer, you have your hand up. You have a comment or a question?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Mayor Souls, I think you're inviting us into the realm of debate. So with that, I'm willing to put the motion on the table that second reading for bylaw 2365 be read a second time, and I'll speak to the motion if there's a seconder.
Okay, sir, is seconder for that motion. Councillor Devlin is seconding that motion. You want to speak to that, Councillor Palmer?
Yes. A very, very good session. I believe the whole public hearing and the insight overall was good, and good questions from council. And I think now we're into the decision making. Well, obviously we are with this motion on the table. So that's one of the advantages of having just first reading before the second reading. It gives a little bit more flexibility if we want to tinker with it. I'll just leave it at that. I do have a number of comments, but I think maybe if there's others that have comments on the second motion at this point, then I'll start to weigh in a little bit later.
Okay. Is there anyone around the table that wants to weigh in on the motion on the table? That's basically going to second reading at 450 square meters. So I'm going to weigh in on that to bring this at least for a discussion. Sorry.
Councillor Palmer, did you mean bylaw 2366 as opposed to 2365?
Probably.
I'm going to take that as an affirmative.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, my computer's making weird things to me for some reason.
Okay, the motion in your package was for bylaw 2366. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's affirmative from Councillor Palmer then?
Yes, so we just need to make sure that Councillor Devlin is.
You're on board with that? Gives a thumbs up. He's okay with that?
I don't know what bylaw 2365 is. So.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to this. So what we've heard from the community, those who are into living at Mackenzie Village are in favor of a larger scheme to be able to have the amenities they feel are essential for their lifestyle. We've heard through writings, letters that have come in, some of the neighbors are content with that. We've also heard from some of the people in the gallery content with that. And then we've had the opposite say, no, leave it at this size. But so my question to you, because the motion on the table is to go to that, size, we could defeat that and we could put another motion on the table to go and limit the number. We've got 5 in there that would go at 450 square meters maximum. That's what's on the table. But we could limit that to 1 or 2 if that's what you wanted. And I just wanted to have that conversation. With what you've heard today, are you comfortable with going with the motion on the table? That basically says we're gonna open those doors up to really across the whole Mackenzie Village area that's retail at this point, the commercial zone, which in reality tells us that's only 5 spaces, or do you want to alter that? And so we're at that point now, so I'm asking for all of you to give me your opinion as to what you feel we should be doing. So, Councillor Palmer, do you want to weigh in first, and then I'll go to some of the other councillors that may want to speak to this.
I'm quite happy for other councillors to go first if there's others that are ready to go.
Councillor Devlin.
Yeah, through the chair, just general comments, I think, at this point for the discussion. I'm looking at the package and I'm looking at the staff reports and I'm looking at the public feedback, both email and here. And what I see on the screen, I don't have any problems with as it's proposed, but my big issue here is that this is what's proposed. This isn't written in stone, and hypothetically, and I'm sure this wouldn't be how it would play out, but hypothetically what could happen is that these 2 restaurants, professional services, and proposed grocery stores, all of which I could agree are places that could use larger space, could say pull out, and then we would hypothetically be opening the doors to 5 very large retail stores, as an example, that could sell all manner of things. And I think what we're hearing, both from the people who are not in support of this and my own gut instinct, listening to all the things, is that what we're really afraid of cannibalizing downtown is retail. Big box retail, moving in. Maybe not big box in the sense of a Walmart, maybe big box in the sense of a Walmart. I don't think that there's any way that we have to control that, as we don't control the uses, we only control the bylaws. So I think it's one of those moments that when I look at the report in front of me, I'm in favor of what's here, but I don't know that what's here is going to be what ends up being the final product. And so I would be more willing to look into perhaps limiting maximum floor area for specific uses. I think we can do that. I would be more interested in taking a more holistic approach to this when it comes to the maximum floor area. I am, however, in favor of the permitted uses in general, and certainly removing the maximum setbacks part of this, because I think that I've seen absolutely no one with any opposition to any of those so far, so I can't see any reason not to support those parts of it, but I think more conversation about the maximum floor area would make me sit a little more comfortably. That's my real comment there.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilor Orlando.
Your Worship, just a comment and again, sorry for clarification. So options that council has, and I'm assuming this would be through an amending motion to the second motion that's on the floor right now, is number 1 to cap the number of units at 450 square feet, or 450 square meters, and number 2, remove some of the text uses from this 450 square meter definition list through an amendment, and include them. I guess they would, you can't just remove them, you would need to include them with the 200 square meter maximum as it is currently written. And just to be clear, those I just want to seek affirmation from staff that those 2 things are possible. And one further clarification question for Councillor Palmer, or maybe the rest of staff is, are we planning to move towards third reading and final adoption. Because I don't support that, I would happy to do second or third reading, but I'm not comfortable doing final adoption today. So I guess two sort of directed questions for clarity.
Okay, Ms. Hartling?
Through your worship to the councillor. If council has concerns about the retail store specifically being too large and you want to restrict those to a maximum of 200 square meters, but say you still want to allow for others to increase up to 450, such as a grocery store, staff could prepare a resolution for you right away that can accomplish that. It would be zoning amendments or zoning bylaw 2366, those sections as amended, and you'd be restricting the neighborhood retail stores to a maximum of 200 square meters, excluding grocery stores. So that's something that staff could prepare for you, depending on if you're worried about, there it is up on the screen. We prepared a few different resolutions after hearing from the public hearing of some of the different concerns. So if you do have concern with the retail floor area, that is a resolution that could amend the subject bylaw that's in front of you to that section specifically right now.
Can I answer your question, Council?
Yeah, Your Worship, I'm just trying to read through because I'm looking at some of my definitions. So that includes neighborhood retail services, retail store, excluding grocery store. And because we are dealing with Section A and Section B, duplicating in some instances the same wording, for example, Section B, I believe, has neighborhood service commercial as well in there. Would this apply to both of them or just one of them?
Ms. Hartling?
It would apply the neighborhood service commercial. All of these uses, local convenience store, neighborhood retail services, retail store, those are under that main heading. So neighborhood service commercial is the heading for area A and B, and then the listed permitted uses under neighborhood service commercial would be what you see in front of you as neighborhood retail services and retail store.
Mm-hmm. Neighborhood retail stores. So that would still allow a daycare, a doggy daycare, and a local convenience store, neighborhood pubs, cafes, and restaurants. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Lindo, that's correct. Those are all service-based businesses. This would be specifically restricting all retail businesses except for grocer.
Mm-hmm. And just another question, that can be done in conjunction with a cap of a maximum of number of businesses that are at 450. So you could do an addition to that as well, saying at a maximum of 3, for example.
Through your worship to Councillor Lindo, yes, we could do that as well. I do have another option and resolution prepared if there is a cap that you're wishing to follow. So we could add them into the same resolution if you're wanting to restrict no more than 5 units at 450, and then also that only a grocery store is included in those. So that is something that we could make as a resolution if that's what council wishes for staff to update right now.
Well, I'm seeking council's thoughts.
Okay, Councillor Chair.
Just a quick question on what professional services are listed. Is listed as a professional service? Does that include items like, through the chair?
No, that's fine. Mr. Simon, do you have that up on your screen?
To your worship, I wasn't sure if Ms. Hartling had it up or not.
Ms. Hartling, do you have that up on your screen as to what professional services are included?
I got professional services. I can read out the definition. So it means a business establishment wherein personal services are performed, including a barber shop. Or sorry, you said personal or professional? Professional, sorry about that. Professional service establishment means the use of a building for provision of professional management, administrative, consulting, financial, and health services, and includes but is not limited to offices of lawyers, accountants, engineers, architects, doctors, and dentists, and offices for the provision of health services, preventative, diagnostic, treatment, therapeutic, or counseling nature, but does not include premises for the provision of veterinary services.
Okay, so items like
physiotherapy, et cetera.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Dentist office, consulting.
Gym?
Through your worship, gym would generally be under personal service establishment. And again, we don't have a specific use in the zoning bylaw right now for gym. So to Councilor Orlando's point, very important through our comprehensive zoning bylaw update, which is a bit separate from this, but that we get a lot of these uses cleaned up. That's what happens when you got 10 planners working over 20 years on the same bylaw, making their own changes.
Councilor Palmer, you have your hand up. Do you want to weigh in at this point?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Just a couple of opening comments to a whole list of comments, sort of more in general in nature rather than specific. So really, this is a debate about the total number of square footage of maximum size, and ultimately we've had the clarification it's 14 versus 19 businesses, 5 businesses having a larger square footage than what is currently allowed. There is also in the bylaw not so much a debate about the commercial use, but the distribution of commercial use. We're going into that a little bit. There was very little dialogue in the public hearing specifically on the actual commercial use, and they have that entitlement anyway at this point. On the in the public hearing, and I'd just like to make a couple comments. I always enjoy Revelstoke's public hearing, and in one of the public hearings, because they're very respectful in general compared to many communities. One of the things that we risk in all communities in British Columbia risk is this opportunity, this public hearing. This council could have bypassed this process of a public hearing because of provincial regulations, and there's more suggestion. That's not specific to here, but I think this lively debate that we're going into, or a split in the community, is an important dialogue, and I'm concerned about the province muzzling this kind of discussion in the future. That aside, there was a little bit of alluding to personal attacks, some bit of off topic in the public hearing, and definitely some fear mongering. And that hasn't been historical in Revelstoke. So just a reminder that we don't need to get to those kind of tactics that are used in other communities. And even the statements like, well, Walmart's coming, these are inaccurate statements about the ability there on the retail space. There is one of the things is on the market side that for whatever reasons, for better or for worse, Mackenzie Village has been given entitlement of commercial spaces, and they can have 19 commercial spaces. And so that's an entitlement that they have at this point, for better or for worse. The reality is there's a demand for retail space, and that has been a shift from a decade ago when there was still vacant stores in downtown. So our community has evolved, and notwithstanding the intent of the past, we heard discussions about the intent. Well, the intent going back a couple decades was no commercial in this area. Well, then that changed as our community evolves. There's always been an intent since the establishment of RMR of the intent of commercial space, and for whatever reason, they have not provided that. And I think it's unfortunate because that's market forces have come in, and there's a need that hasn't been met. So we evolve as a community. This is not an increase of commercial overall square footage, and arguably it is the potential to reduce the number of businesses, basically from 19 to 14, that are in competition. And in comments in the public hearing, the things I was hearing, that there was a fair bit of I sensed protectionism. We don't want competition. And I get concerned about that. And again, we heard about the evolution of Revelstoke from the stories in the public hearing about people needing bigger spaces. So there is a need that is not being met elsewhere in the community. And so there is a potential opportunity for that. And there's pros and cons on that. Overall, I do not see this as a major shift, and certainly not to the extent where people are going, trying to turn back the clock of what it was in the past. It is this 34,000 square meters that carries on. When we look at the potential for box stores, that's a discussion out the big box stores. Yes, the RMR has potential opportunity, and this council gave them fairly broad development entitlements throughout most of their areas that this council will not have the opportunity to weigh into. However, so now we're talking a smaller component of that in the competitive spaces, and I'm not overly concerned about that. It'll be interesting to see where council is going. I sort of see where Councillor Lando and others are maybe alluding to putting some restrictions, so we do, instead of having 5 larger units instead of 10 smaller units. Restricting what those kind of uses are, and I'm certainly open to that dialogue. Thank you, Mayor Souls.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Any other comments from council? Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to the rest of the council here and to everybody listening, I want you all to know that we listened to all your comments, everything you said here today. We've read all of your email submissions. Been considering it all since the first time this came around for first reading. I did hear in the public hearing today that some of you some of you in the community that have owned businesses here for multiple decades were able to purchase and move your businesses when you needed the extra space. That is not an option that I see today. There is almost zero commercial space available downtown, and you all talked about your trials and your tribulations and everything you went through. I think, or at least in my opinion, having this proposal before us kind of negates that in the future. So I'm getting stumbling on my words here. It opens the door for a possibility for businesses to grow, and I am in favor of that. There is no space right now for anybody to grow. I'll probably jump back once I get my.
Sure, that's fine. Councillor Palmer, did you have another comment?
Thank you, Mayor Souls, through to Councillor Cherry. Just for clarification, so you're supportive with the second reading as it stands right now, just for clarification?
I am. I do have certain concerns, and I'd love to hear everybody else's opinions, but as it's written right now, I don't have a problem with it. If we wanted to restrict it to 5 businesses, even though the buildings have already been built and that restriction's kind of already built in, I don't mind that. I don't think that removing the retail aspect of it is going to have an immense positivity for downtown, for all the existing business owners. I see this as an opportunity for business growth, economic development, more jobs. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, thank you for that comment. So, Ms. Hartling, with the motion that's on the table, we go to 450 square meters. Would that mean the developer would automatically make sure that those 5 units were at that size immediately, or would they determine that depending on the tenant's ability to need space as they come in? Any comment?
Your worship, you're speaking to the current original motion for 450 to the sub area A and sub area B, not any amending motion?
No, I'm asking just as a motion that's on the table right at the present time.
It would be determined on if there is a tenant wanting to increase. So it wouldn't be immediate. Some of them are an immediate tenant, but it would be based on the need if that's something that they're wanting to take down a wall.
All right, thank you for that. Any other comments from council? Councillor Devlin.
Through the chair, I'd just like to thank Ms. Hartling for having a very quick amendment based on our conversation. That was nice to see. We didn't have to stumble over waiting for that, so thank you for that. The first amendment that you put on the screen there, I am more in favor of that than as it stands currently. I feel that if we're going to talk retail, there's no proposed retail uses for large spaces as it stands anyway. And I can't think of a specific retail use that would require a double unit, except something in the realm of a big box or department store, something that would kind of take away from the overall feel of the area and what the current edge is. I'm all for having retail up here. I'm all for the concept of growing in terms of grocery stores and daycares and things we've talked about that would require larger spaces. I just think that if we're going to listen to all voices at the table, removing the retail use from that larger thing would kind of cover all bases and all concerns as far as I've gathered, but that's just my opinion. I believe we have a motion on the table, so I don't believe I can amend as it stands.
Okay, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Actually, I had a question regarding procedural question. So if Councillor Devlin was wanting to make that amendments, do we do complete second reading first, or does he do an amending motion to the current bylaw? That's a question, or a motion on the table, rather.
Ms. Wood?
I would like to see a motion amending second reading.
So if I may, Mayor Souls, so I'm not sure if Councillor Devlin's ready at this point to make that motion, and I see Councillor Orlando maybe has some comments before we go down that path. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Orlando, comment?
Yeah, Your Worship, I am prepared to make an amending motion. I don't want to jump on your jump in front of your parade, Councillor Devlin, but however it is different than what is on there. The proponents have said that the maximum configuration is 5. So based on the setup of the building. So I would like wording, and we're going to lean on staff for a cap at 5 at 450, meaning the remainder would have a maximum of 200 square meters. And for that exclusion, there was a motion that Ms. Hartling had put up there that include retail services. I would like to include 4 categories that are excluded from the 450 and move down to a maximum floor size, regardless of 200, and that includes retail store, neighborhood retail services, local convenience, and licensee retail. So those 4 sections. So I am willing to put that forward in a motion. I do believe, though, it would be advisable if staff were to word that for me. And those are crossing
Mr. Simon, and then I'll come back to Councillor Palmer.
To Your Worship, just want to say staff are ready. Basically tell us what you're looking to achieve, and we've been working behind the scenes here to have the resolutions appropriately crafted so that it gets its way into the final bylaw to help council expedite the update.
Okay, so Councillor Palmer, you put the original motion on. Do you want to speak to what Councillor Orlando is stating?
Yes, Mayor Sol. So my comment is, it sounds like we're talking 2 things, the use and then the total maximum size. So I'm thinking that those might be 2 separate amending motions rather than combining the 2. Just a suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment. Mr. Simon's saying yes. All right, so let's get a look at that. You have a comment?
Yeah, I included 4 categories capped at 200. That included because there's both are included retail store as well as neighborhood retail services. So those are 2 separate things. So I think they would need to both be included on the 200 code.
Okay, Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, Councillor Orlando, just for clarity, you want to have 4 types of uses that would be restricted to 200 square meters, being neighborhood retail, retail store, licensee retail, and local convenience.
That's correct.
So through the chair to Mr. Rousseau, just those last 2, bump up to after retail store. And just to provide clarity for council, the only retail store that would then be permitted to go above 200 square meters to a maximum of 450 would be grocery stores.
Okay.
And I just want to ensure that that's the intent of what council's trying to achieve through your worship, Councilor Orlando.
Mm-hmm. And that's because it's specifically listed as an exclusion on the amending motion. Is that right? Because as I'm understanding, the definition is encapsulating everything that generally could be considered that unless it's specifically listed as an exclusion.
Through your worship, Councilor Orlando, yes, one of the downfalls we have in our zoning bylaw right now is we don't specifically define grocery store. Mm-hmm. We just have it captured under a broad retail store. So we will be updating that with the zoning bylaw update, but for the time being, staff certainly understand the intent of what Councilor Orlando is trying to achieve here, and this is sufficient wording to get us through today, if that is the desire of council, I should say.
Okay, so I have a question because we are looking at restricting the total amount of units at 5, which is physically the only thing that they can do as far as maximum goes. But we're also adding, okay, everything else has to be 200 square meters with the exception of a grocery store. So we now have 5 spaces. Does that mean we're going to have 5 grocery stores? Am I misunderstanding that?
To your worship, there's multiple uses that are allowed in sub area A and sub B, some of them existing, some of them proposed through this text amendment.
Right.
What this would restrict is the 4 uses that Councilor Orlando's had in there. The other uses, daycare, dog daycare, personal service establishment, professional service establishment, can still go up to 450.
Okay.
And as well as grocery store under a retail store, but the specific 4 ones listed in the resolution here would not be permitted to go above 200.
Okay, I'm understanding that now. Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments from councilors? Are you comfortable with this that's on the table? Councilor Orlando, I'll go back to you as your amending motion.
So just to understand procedurally where we're at is that I have proposed something, so I would need someone to support that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we need.
So does anyone have, and I'm just happy to, as much as we can build consensus as possible, I'm happy to understand comments and thoughts prior to.
Councilor Lucille, then Councilor Cherry, and then I'll go to Councilor Palmer.
Thanks, Marshall. Yeah, I think for how the amendments are coming along, it looks good. My concern is with the professional service establishment, when we're talking about a showroom, that's gonna be taking up 2 locations, when one of those locations could be a showroom and one location could be a small business. That would be more what I would be leaning towards supporting. But at the time, it seems that the retail is the larger concern from the community. So the fact that that's captured in these amendments, I'm happy with.
Okay, Councilor Cherry.
Do you mind coming back?
No, I don't know. Councilor Devlin.
Yeah, it looks good to me. It might be a little bit more, it's a little more detailed than I would have gone, but it captures basically what I was looking for in terms of an amending motion. So I'm happy to support this rather than worry about how I would have phrased it.
Okay, Councilor Orlando, I'll come back to you.
Just to follow up on comments by Councilor Lucia, I don't know about the actual square meter. I don't know what you mean by showroom. I'm not sure. I'm sure you have something in mind, but I guess my question is that the way a definition like professional service establishment works is that that's anything that's a professional service establishment that's reasonably could be defined as that, unless you specifically put wording in there to exclude something. So if you're concerned about a showroom, and are we talking sleds here? What are we talking?
No,
no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mackenzie Village showroom.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, there you go. Sorry. The sleds anyway. No, just kidding. It could be excluded or something like that as well. Specific to that. Something.
Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear that. I think we're ready to have an amendment put on the table. It sounds like there's probably general support. You can see where the debate goes there.
Okay, somebody needs to second this, so I'll go to Councilor Cherry before we do that.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm looking for clarification. Right now, prior to this in front of us, we have a blanket proposal that if we don't pass, the applicant has the ability to, in the future, ask for spot applications. Correct?
Yes. Through Your Worship, yes, anyone can make an application to amend the zoning bylaw at any period of time, but will need to come back to council for consideration.
Thanks. If we were to go forward with this, will that end the chance for in the future someone, an applicant to come forward?
Through Your Worship, Councillor Chair, someone can always come in and make an application. We have no right to restrict someone's ability to amend the zoning bylaw. It's a public document. Anyone can make that application based on staff's discussions with the applicant, and Ms. Hartland can correct me if I'm wrong, and if council wants to direct their questions to the owner's agent who's in the room today, Mr. Arnett, can certainly do that. But our understanding is that even with the amendments that council has proposed, this would still allow the tenants that are seeking approval to get in to Mackenzie Village today in a way that accomplishes their needs.
And would, if that were to happen in the future, we'll be looking at another 9-month delay?
So through Your Worship, Councillor Cherry, this application came in May 24th. So we were just around the 4-month mark to get it through to council. And I will note that APC didn't meet in August, or else this would have come in about 3 months. We estimate 4 to 6 months usually for a zoning bylaw text amendment, 3 to 5 months, given the process needs to go through. And staff are quite good at hitting those target timelines. I'm not sure where the 9 months came from.
Appreciate that.
Okay. Councillor Palmer, comment?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you for that. So you're seconding the amendment of the motion?
Perhaps the amending motion and who moved it can be reread out, and then I'll affirm that that's what I'm seconding.
Okay. Let me put that back on the screen, please.
So I move that sections 1.21 and 1.22 of zoning amendment bylaw number 2366 be amended to restrict the total amount of units that can have a floor area of 450 square meters to 5 between sub area and sub area B. And you want to do this? Okay, thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Are we going to do both, or do we want to do one at a time?
I think one at a time.
One at
One
a
at a
time.
time, okay.
Any further discussion, Councillor Orlando, you want to discuss this further?
Yeah, so this is part 1 of 2. I guess my comments apply almost equally to both. I would like to point out a few things. Number 1, the provincial government is trying to get housing going, and I understand this is not a housing question here. We're talking about retail spaces, but one of the directions we're seeing is a desire to cut down on very long and often meetings like this where people would rather be doing something else. I'm sure all of us would rather be doing something else, and just get things done. So I'm trying to get things done by trying to set the direction moving forward by doing one thing. I mean, these future applicants, and typically what you see with a variance applicant is people will come forward, one-off and say, hey, I want my shop to be twice the size. Would you let me do that? And we're trying to set a roadmap going forward for this development. Number 2, I really do have concerns about downtown. There's lots of places with dead downtowns. I don't want to see that. And if you, I guess my thought is that if you compare just downtown and Mackenzie Village, that's not looking at the whole picture. Like if you look at the official community plan and what is proposed long-term for the resort lands especially, and what the resort could do in the future and what the resort is building right now, we're talking about a very large shift towards up towards the resort area, and things to come in that direction, including other developments in that area. So I don't want to put too much over in that direction. I think we need to be mindful and look 10, 20, 30 years down the road as we make these decisions. And finally, I guess the third thing is from its conception, one of the ideas here is to provide neighborhood services, so people don't have to drive downtown to get a loaf of bread. This will, I think, provide a balance between allowing for a few larger places, but not detract from a primary focus on retail downtown or retail, at the resort where they can align the services that they provide with a resort development. So this was, I was on council when this original comprehensive development zone zone was approved, and the whole idea was housing. At the time there was discussion of $99,000 one-bedroom condos from the proponent, where unfortunately we didn't come in at that target, or the market didn't allow us to do that. There was also a housing focus. As you recall, I proposed in front of a very large gym full of about 600 people a cap of 25% vacation rentals. Council did not support that at the time. I thought that would be great, just because our focus is housing, and my focus has been day one is housing. I would like, I think this will transition to housing as we build our hotel stock up, and I think what this very large future development will need is a variety of services that people can get, like an optometrist or another shoe store, or somebody who can do your boot fitting, or another snowboard or skateboard shop with a variety of things down there. My concern would be, and I would like to say this a lot, is you can't swim upstream against market forces for too long, and I do see the concern of large retail outcompeting small retail in the downtown space, and it's consistent with our master development agreement, as well as with our official community plan, is that what people say they love when they come to this town is it does not look like their suburb, which they marred with strip mall developments. And I think we can strike a balance here by allowing for commerce, by allowing for new development, by allowing this to get going, by setting a clear path that will avoid long monologues from councillors like this, and just get going with getting down to business. So that's my thoughts.
All right, Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor Schultz. Yes, so with this amendment, I understand the reasoning behind it and capping it at 5. It's kind of not worth it because the building has already kind of said that it can only be capped at 5. I think we look back to APC's proposal of capping it at 4. If they are able to come back with other text amendments to get a 5th unit for 450 square meters, then the proponents can come back with that. And then that would challenge them for allowing for business development in this instead of a Mackenzie show.
Willing to entertain an amendment on the amendment. I know we're going to get in the weeds here, but if you want to do 4, go 4. I'll support it.
Councillor Palmer.
I'm ready to vote. I'll be voting in favor.
Okay, so the comment from Councillor Lusa was suggesting going to 4. And because
sorry.
you seconded that, I wanted your comment.
Okay, got you. I'm so, yeah, I'd probably be supportive of that as well. It's where the majority is going on this. I don't think this is a huge thing either for the developer or for the community. So we're splitting hairs, but that's okay. That's what debate's about.
So I want you to understand that if they wanted to do a showroom and use 2 units, even if we're at 4, can they still do that? Okay, Mr. Simon.
Through your worship to your worship, all of council. One thing I just want to clarify, because I believe we heard this, and what I've heard from council loud and clear is that you guys all want to see daycares out here. I do believe, and Ms. Harlan can correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the individuals that spoke said they were looking at unit 4110 and 4108 to combine those into a unit. That would be the 5th space at 450 square meters or just under. If you look at figure 4 in the report, it shows there's 1 proposed grocery store, 1 proposed professional service establishment, 1 proposed restaurant, another proposed restaurant, and then potential to consolidate another unit. So I just want to make sure that there's no unintended consequences with any changes with respect to the daycares from what we've heard. That's obviously a priority, and maybe the applicant can speak to that a little bit more.
Okay, so Mr. Barnett, if I could ask you, Councillor Lusa is concerned about double unit being used to house your showroom, and that would limit another retail business. Can you comment on how much space you would need for your showroom to sell your product?
It's the architecture office and a showroom for the future development. It's only like 380 square meters.
Okay, so that would be 2 units. So that's an architect's office and the showroom. So they're gonna need that anyway. So that's why I want you to be aware of that sort of thing. So you wanna make comment?
No, I think, like I said, I went through APC and their suggestion was to allow for 4 units, and knowing that a proponent can come forward with an additional text amendment to have a 5th unit at 450 square meters.
Okay, so are you comfortable if the mover and the seconder write that back to 4? That's what you would feel comfortable voting on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go Councilor Orlando, Councilor Palmer, are you okay if that amendment was written to 4 units and total amount of 4 units, it can have that floor area of 450 square meters?
I'll concur with the mover, with whatever the mover wants to do.
Okay, so.
Your worship, yeah, and I had forgotten the APC's recommendation. Thank you, Councilor Lucero, for reminding me. I'm happy to move to 4.
Okay, so our mover and our seconder are willing to amend that to 4, Ms. Hartling. So if that can be changed, Ms. Rousseau, whoever's typing in behind the scenes there. Yeah, you've got that changed to 4, so thank you, appreciate that. All right, so the motion on the table is that section 1.21 and 1.22 of zoning amendment bylaw number 2366 be amended to restrict the total amount of units that can have a floor area of 450 square meters to 4 between sub-area A and sub-area B. So that's what you're comfortable with, Councilor Orlando, Councilor Palmer, and all of council. So I'm going to call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councilor Cherry and Councilor Devlin are opposed. This motion is carried. Move on to number 2.
Mayor Souls, no, that's okay. We'll just carry on. Thanks.
You wanted to know why they were opposed?
Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay, Councilor Cherry is willing to weigh in.
I just don't feel we need to restrict the amount.
Okay.
Either
Right.
way as well. I'm opposed because what we're realistically talking about is a 4 to 6 month delay on any application for a daycare as it's written here. And I don't see the necessity for that at all. I think they're not going to give up on architecture business in the showroom, which was the problem Councilor Lucio had, is they're the owners of the building. And they're probably going to keep that, and everything else is already proposed and rented presumably, so, or at least in conversations far past the daycare. So what we're really looking at with that motion is a 4 to 6 month delay on the daycare.
All right, appreciate the comments. Okay, let's move on to number 2. What was the amended motion that you were looking for, Councilor Orlando?
I'm gonna need to see the wording. Thank you for staff. And section 2, that's sections 1.21 and 1.22 of zoning amended bylaw number 2366 be amended to restrict the uses, neighborhood retail services and retail store, local convenience, and licensee retail. I'm not sure if that's the exact wording, to a maximum of 200 square meters, excluding grocery stores.
Okay, seconder for that motion, Councilor Devlin. Any discussion on that motion? So you're basically amending this to restrict the uses to maximum 200 square meters, excluding grocery stores. Any comments, any questions? Do you want to weigh in, Councilor Orlando?
Just real quick, yeah, and I'm sorry, cheating a bit, but I'm speaking in motion 1. I'm not aware of what the sequencing of what is proposed for the larger units are, so it's hard for me to make a decision based on that decision. And also, is that are we beholden to that, or does the developer have the ability to change those around and prioritize that? I believe that would really be not up to us.
And that's basically you're wanting to know about that
No,
unit on-
I believe that's the case, is that if you have 4, then.
So I'll get Mr. Simon to weigh in.
To your worship, based on staff's understanding of tenants that are looking to get in the building, we have 2 proposed restaurants, 1 proposed professional service establishment, and then a proposed grocery store. The daycare was looking to get in as well, but I don't know if things have been firmed up. It would be the prerogative of the developer who they're ultimately going to rent to, so staff don't have control over that. Staff's recommendation of council does want to cap it. The decision's already been made, but it would have been 5 certainly to accommodate the daycare, even if there's a chance that a daycare doesn't go in there. We have such a desperate need for daycares in this community, so staff would always be supportive of seeing more daycares and restricting the process that future daycares need to go through.
Okay, good. Goes back to our question about unintended consequences. All right, so let's go back to the motion that's on the table. If we could bring that back up again. Okay, any comments on this motion, restricting the uses of retail, neighborhood retail services, retail store, local convenience, licensee retail? So can I have clarification on what those uses are, please? Ms. Hartling, comment?
Yeah, so the retail services, retail store, all retail uses except for a grocery store. So those are mainly retail stores. And then the licensee retail is a liquor store would be restricted to 200 square meters, and then local convenience would be like a local convenience store uses being restricted to 200 square meters. So they all are retail in nature. Local convenience is kind of in between, but they all are retail in nature. And then any of the professional services, dog daycare, and then the daycare are not included in that 200 cap.
All right.
Except for the other resolution is capping for them at 450. So there's 2 amending motions here of use, and then a daycare could be at 450, but only 4 out of all of the units can be the 450. So it depends on who the developer allows in the building at 450.
All right, good. And then I'm just going to ask one more question that's not related to this motion, but the setbacks, we need to do a separate motion to deal with that. Is it correct?
The setbacks are in the current zoning bylaw. So this is just amending specific sections of the bylaw. So bylaw 2366 is still in front of council if you wish to consider further readings. This is amending it before any further readings,
Okay.
but that's still within the bylaw.
Yep, appreciate that clarification. Thank you for that. All right, any comments on the motion on the table? Councilor Orlando, then Councilor Devlin.
I do have a comment, I just have a clarification question based on what staff have, just to double check. Those 4 uses listed there are capped at 200 square meters, no matter what. They can't be one of the 450 square meter ones, is that correct? Yeah, okay. I thought you had something different, but yeah.
Good. Councilor Devlin.
I just wanted to say general comments. I'm in support of this. This is going to essentially cover the concerns that we've heard here today, while still allowing all the proponents that are currently in talks of moving in to move in. This also puts down some safeguards that would prevent against the sort of worrisome cannibalizing downtown. I don't know if that's everyone's concern, but it is some people's concerns. It's the main concern we've heard in our public hearing. If there were any concerns at all listed, that was it. So I think this covers all those bases. I'm in full support of this, I think.
Good. Councilor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Just for clarification, I know we keep on coming back, but I just want to make sure it's really clear in my mind. So with this second amendment to the bylaw, then there would be up to 4 larger units that could be a grocery store, could be a daycare, could be a doggy daycare. What other uses could they be?
Ms. Hartling, you want
Through your worship, the other uses could be cafe, restaurant, neighborhood pub, daycare, dog daycare, personal service establishment, and professional service establishments. The restrictions would be liquor store, convenience store, neighborhood retail service, and retail store to the 200. So all retail based.
Right. So Mayor Souls, I'm I'm in support of this. I think it addresses the bulk of the concerns in the public hearing, and I concur with Councillor Devlin on that aspect of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from council regarding the motion on the table? Seeing none, I will call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so now we are going to go back to zoning amendment bylaw. Do I have to say as amended?
Yes, you're going to call the question on the original motion as amended.
Okay, to go to second reading as amended, I will call the question on that. All in favor? Opposed?
Sorry, I got distracted. Which one was that?
So we're going back to the original second zoning amendment bylaw 2366 as amended, being read a second time.
Quick question. Sorry, the second one, Nick, I apologize. It's fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
And now's the time to ask, not after the fact.
Mayor Souls?
Yes. Go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, so just reading behind the lines, through to Councillor Cherry, I think you're wrestling with it because you're supportive of things, some parts, and one part you're not supportive of. So how do you do it? At the end of the day, in the end of the day, like, I'm not 100% happy, but at the end of the day, it's been good debate. And in the spirit of democracy and consensus, I'm going to be supporting it. And from my perspective, so I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Is that helpful, or do you want to ask?
It is. I do have a quick comment though. I am a little wary about having what looks like in the future the daycare having to apply again. I understand that, the will of everybody is to encourage more daycares, larger daycares, and everything, childcare. I feel like we have the opportunity here.
Councilor Palmer, you had your hand up.
Yeah, actually, that was a bit of an accident, but through the Councillor Cherry, I said, I don't disagree with you. However, if the majority of council defeated this, then we're into maybe even a bigger mess.
I understand.
Good point. Councillor Romano.
Yeah, I do not think we have the ability to prioritize which of the four are chosen by the developer. That's up to the developer. So to say the daycare is the fifth, I think we'd have no say in that. The daycare could be their first choice out of the four.
Okay, I appreciate that comment. All right, I'm going to call a question on reading the amended bylaw 2366 a second time. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Does someone want to read this amended motion a third time? Councillor Devlin.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw number 2366 be read a third time as amended.
All right, seconder for that motion, please.
I'll second.
Councillor Palmer. Discussion on this motion. Pretty much the same as last time, except we're moving a little further down the road. I'll call Councillor Palmer, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment because there was some possible desire of extending this out. I think we've had a lot of debate on this zoning amendment, and I think it's been notwithstanding some of the hiccups with the process earlier in the year, but it's now before council. We've had lots of opportunity before, even with the first reading, to sort of dive into the details. I think we've done our research. And also we've heard from the community, and the public hearing is now closed, so we can't take new information on at this point without really unraveling things. So I encourage the third reading, and I would also encourage adoption today if possible, but at the very latest at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Palmer. Any other comments from council? Councillor Lano.
I'm happy with the reading. I prefer to leave final adoption until the next meeting.
Okay. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion is carried unanimously. So we do have a motion to adopt this zoning amendment bylaw. Is anyone have the aptitude to put that on the table today? Councillor Devlin,
I move that zoning amendment bylaw number 2366 be adopted as amended.
seconder. Councillor Cherry, discussion on this, and I'm gonna go to Councillor Orlando first as to, if you don't mind weighing in why you're opposed to this at this time. You don't have to say anything, I'm just asking if you want to say.
I feel that we should, in these processes, be mindful of ability to for us to think and seek clarification for ourselves in our mind and be comfortable with what is going on. And again, at the outset, I was not happy to see this last time around have first, second, third reading and final adoption. I think we just have to be mindful of in our process in general of making sure we are listening to people. I realize that this is a public hearing, so we're limited in our ability to take on further comment, but I just want to set that tone that you know, we're seeing changes in provincial legislation that is really trying to steer away from long conversations, long public hearings, and try to get these things through. I think I'm happy to move in that direction and play ball with for the provincial authorities, but I also want to make sure that we do not lose our ear to the ground on the community for these things, and whether we know it or not, or whether I don't know. I think people misinterpret this as if we try to are perceived as being rushing through. So that's the main reason why.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Cherry.
I'm on a different perspective. I don't think we should slow this down anymore. It's been a while. It's been in front of us since the spring. It didn't quite go exactly how I thought best, and I'm okay with that, but I think that we should move forward with adoption.
Okay. Councillor Devlin, any comment?
I'm inclined to agree with what Councillor Cherry said. We've done the discussion. I was all for a public hearing. I wanted to hear what the public says. I know Mackenzie Village has been a pros and cons sort of view from the public. I wanted to hear as much as possible. We got about 90 emails, I think just short, which for a public hearing is quite a lot in my experience. I mean, I haven't been here all that long. We're just a year in, but it was good engagement. There was a lot of it. I think I am happy to proceed from here. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor. So as far as the process for this particular application, I agree with Councillor Devlin and Councillor Cherry. I think there's been quite good due diligence. On the governance side, I also agree with Councillor Orlando, because this is the one time that we have a little bit of a potential space for sober second thought. Now, notwithstanding that, I think we've had quite a bit of that already, but that's the risk. As soon as we adopt, it's adopted, it's done. However, just in this sort of in general, I would be interested to have the discussion with Council and Councillor Orlando regarding the province's intention, because I don't think they want us to have this debate and that's where they're going. So if we're going to play ball with the province, they are taking away the public's opportunity for a good democratic discourse. But that's a bigger topic for later on. I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Lucio, any comment? Councillor Orlando, follow-up?
Yeah, the comment I'm making on final adoption right now is not actually really relevant to this point. It was more the first time this saw light of day, in that the communication that was circulated to the public said council will consider first reading, and then it was first reading, final adoption on the first sniff of it, and that engenders mistrust. We need to make sure we are clear with the community on what we're doing. If the province is taking away the community's ability to comment, it's incumbent upon us to make sure we are doing our level best to make sure we have our ear to the ground, are hearing what they're saying, and especially, I say this quite often, specifically make small changes that they want us to work with. So that's where this is coming from.
Okay, appreciate that. Councillor Palmer, follow-up?
Yeah, just in general, I think Councillor Orlando and I are actually very close to being on the same page as far as the right of the public and clarity of information. Thanks.
Good. All right. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. All right, staff, I want to thank you for your time and all the work that you've put into this zoning amendment bylaw. And I want to thank the community for their time coming out and giving us the benefit of their comments. So we are now going to take a 5-minute break. So Ms. Russo, can you put our notice up on online? And that'll give council a chance after 3 hours to take a break.
One thing down. That was the big thing. Yeah. That was the big thing.
Yeah.
Ms. Russo, we're back. If you'd like to make sure we're ready to go.
I've got 3 hours. Can we close that?
Yeah, good idea.
So we don't hear Shelley's interview? That didn't help at all.
This is good.
Yeah, don't worry. Thanks. Our in-council meetings don't go out that way. It's just cuts in.
Okay, because we're unmuted and we're recording.
All right, council, we are back in action here with item 5B. Ms. Hartling, do we have a bit of a presentation on this?
It's a public hearing.
Yeah, it's for a development variance permit, and I do have a presentation. I'll just quickly do that right now. So the application in front of council is a development variance permit. It's to reduce the required parking spaces for 20 secondary suites within a 39-unit row house development. This is for DBP 2023-015, and the subject property is 414 Humbert Street. So just go through the background, proposal overview, staff evaluation, and then follow up with a staff recommendation.
So we've got nothing up on the screen if there's something supposed to be there.
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you. I usually check with you. It's the first time.
We were up and running.
Oh.
You got it.
You can see the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. So just to reiterate, it's a development variance permit, and I'll just go through the proposal, background, overview, staff evaluation, and staff recommendation. So the subject property, it's currently under construction, being redeveloped to build a 3-phase row house development. This is at 414 Humbert Street with a total of...
Mayor Souls, may I just interject for a second? So
Sure.
It's not showing on my computer, but you're seeing it. You're seeing the presentation on yours.
I'm seeing it on the big screen. I've opted my computer to not see it so I can see you. But let me make sure that you should be able to see it, Councillor. Hang on a second.
I believe Councillor Lucio can see it.
So can the public see it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
She's on page 3 of
Ingrid can see
the
it.
report.
What's that?
Ingrid can see it.
Ingrid
She's
can see
remoted
it?
in.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Ask
okay. All right. It just must be mine. That's fine. Thanks.
Carry on, Ms. Hartling.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the development is at 414 Humbert Street, total of 39 row house dwelling units that council reviewed under a development permit for the multifamily building. And this is 0.62 hectares of property, and it butts Humbert Street and serviced by community water and sewer and has a slight slope. It's within the South Revelstoke neighborhood, and it's surrounded predominantly by R2 zone properties, which allow for single family and duplex development, as well as the Southside Market grocery store. It's zoned medium density multifamily, the R3 zone in the zoning bylaw. It's within the multifamily residential and partially within the scenic corridor on 4th Street, which was presented to council previously. And then it's also designated medium density residential in the OCP. So for the proposal overview, it's to reduce the minimum parking requirements from 1 to 0 for each accessory dwelling unit, which is in a secondary suite within the row houses, located within 4 row house buildings containing a total of 20 dwelling units. So each row house dwelling unit contains 3 stories with a bedroom located on the lowest level. You'll see in the image renderings of the proposed row houses, and then also where the proposed bedroom is to be renovated or converted into a studio suite. So the applicant has proposed to convert the lower floor bedroom within 20 of these units of the proposed row houses along the rear of the property into a studio suite with a floor area of 22 to 25 square meters. So that's 240 to 278 square feet and a separate private entrance off the back covered patio. The development meets the total required parking for the 39 row house dwelling unit. So this is 2 spaces per row house dwelling. And then they also have met the visitor parking requirements of 1 visitor space per 5 dwelling units. So that's a total of 86 parking spaces, 78 row house parking spaces, and 8 visitor parking spaces. And the total required parking with the 20 secondary suites would bring the parking up to 106 spaces required. And the variance request is to reduce this reduction of the 20 additional parking spaces for the studio suites. So just to give you an idea of the layout, the front buildings on Humbert Street are not proposed to have these studio spaces. It's the rear buildings, building 2, 4, 6, and 7, that have 5 units in them each. There's 2 parking spaces for the row house building, and then you'll see highlighted in yellow in the image the proposed studio suite, which would be accessed from the rear through the back patio. So for staff evaluation for council consideration, we have reviewed this proposal against the city bylaw and policy and do support the requested variance for the parking spaces. Staff have worked with the applicant to secure options to support alternate transportation methods. And we have required the applicant to extend the sidewalk from the property frontage on Humbert to connect to 4th Street, and also reinstate the existing bus stop with improvements to meet the updated BC Transit bus stop guidelines. Each row house dwelling unit does include a garage with bike storage and 2 dedicated spaces. The request of relaxation in parking requirements is appropriate for this type of development context and does encourage inclusion of a development form of a micro suite, so a small studio suite while still providing 1 parking space per dwelling unit. As the city is shifting more towards a pedestrian and bicycle oriented friendly city, and we are supporting for further infill development, staff are engaged in rewriting the zoning bylaw with these updates of in line with official community plan and provincial directives, with re-examining the parking regulations as part of that. This is also in conjunction with following through with transportation master plan and other strategies for parking. And the OCP supports and encourages alternative transportation modes as a predominant method of transportation. And this includes transportation active items to amend the zoning bylaw, which we are currently working on, while promoting other modes of transportation such as cycling. The staff mailed landowner letters within 100 meters of the property. 57 properties are captured in this area. As the data finalizing the report for the council agenda, 4 submissions have been received. We have now received 13 submissions. They are all in opposition. The reasons for opposition are specifically due to concerns of increased on-street parking, increased traffic and safety issues, and operational snow removal issues, both on Humbert and 4th Street. Staff will note these are operational concerns. All traffic, on-street parking, and snow clearing concerns are addressed and enforced by the city. And this is while implementing transportation strategies and recommendations outlined in the Transportation Master Plan. And staff did recently present to council updates on 4th Street, multi-use path, considerations for traffic calming options. And all of these traffic parking strategies and projects, these will continue and also help with any of the concerns of off-street parking reductions as we move forward with infill, and also meeting provincial directives on supporting multifamily housing and reduced parking. So staff have a recommendation on the screen that the development variance permit be issued at 414 Humbert Street for the reduction in the required parking, specifically for a secondary suite from 1 to 0 spaces per dwelling unit for no more than 20 dwelling units. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartley. It's nice to see a proposal coming forward with these micro suites to encourage even more housing in our community. And what we're seeing in with the provincial government basically a lot of parking is gonna go the way of the dodo bird as far as what the provincial government is mandating to come in next year. So I'm in support of this and would encourage council to support this. Also, does someone want to put this motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Devlin.
I will move the development variance permit be issued at 414 Humbert Street for the following variance to zoning bylaw number 2299. A, section 13.2, required off-street parking. 1, to reduce the required parking space for an accessory dwelling unit from 1 to 0 spaces per dwelling unit for no more than 20 dwelling units.
Okay, second for the motion, Councilor Cherry. Discussion on the motion. Anyone have any comments about this? Councilor Lucille.
Thank you, Marshals. Just a couple questions for staff. When this proposal first came through, were there parking variances that we approved?
Certainly.
Through your worship, no, this property for this multifamily met all parking requirements for the row house dwelling units and visitor parking. No variances required.
Thank you. One other question, is this zone enabled to have short-term rentals in it?
Through your worship, no, short-term rentals are not permitted.
Thank you.
Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, your worship. I just want to throw my support behind this. We have there's been recent changes to our public transit. I believe there's a stop right in front of this development, if I'm correct. We've added more buses and added more routes. We've also luckily had the ability to decrease the costs. With that, with that in mind, as well as its close proximity to a grocery store and downtown core, I am in support of this. I have read all of the public comments, and I do understand where the public's coming from. I think that we need to move forward with more housing and more housing solutions and prioritize that over some of the changes that are coming down in regards to parking, both from the province and on the city level.
Good. Thank you for that comment. Any other comments from council? Councilor Orlando.
Yeah, I have a question for staff, just for clarification, and I want to emphasize, thanks to Councilor Cherry for pointing it out. Like, I did read the comments and the concerns from neighbors about parking issues, and there's many of them, and definitely I'm hearing those. My question for staff, on a technical level, I wonder if you have any comment on what is coming from the provincial government regarding parking rules in the near future. Do we know in detail what's going to happen?
Through your worship to Councillor Orlando, the province is proposing Bill 44, and they have outlined that they're going to be providing policy directives and guidelines to this municipalities on how those are to work with multifamily buildings. So it is for small scale, multi-unit buildings, density provisions, and they have outright said in the bill that municipalities are not to restrict parking for these units. How that looks, staff can't say right now because we don't have the policy guidelines, but there will be reductions in parking for certain types of development to convert a single family or duplex zone to allow for further density, and the parking will be off-street parking and loading requirements are noted in that bill, but I believe staff will, I can direct to Mr. Simon, but staff are digesting all of the council the provincial directives to provide council with and the community with what's happening from the provincial side out to the community. So that is something that is coming down the pipe from the province by June 30th, 2024. How that looks specifically for a development like this, it might be where this wouldn't be a variance coming to council. However, it's hard to say with 100% certainty without seeing those policy directives.
Follow up, Council?
Yeah, just one more question regarding improvements to signage or other parking things off the property. Is there anything proposed to, for example, make it clear people can't park in front of someone's driveway, or how far they need to be offset, like painting the curbs or something like that? offset from the intersection, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Orlando, that's all in discussion under with the building permit through a works and services agreement that's being sorted with the applicant. So that's where we've required sidewalk lighting and any of those requirements for certain distances from stop signs being painted yellow, certain areas that can't be parking with intersections. So that's all outlined through those agreements with engineering and the developers. So if there is any concerns of safety or turning or blind spots, that would be the developer would need to pay for those signage for the city to install.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other comments or concerns from council? Councilor Palmer? You're muted.
Thank you, Marisols. A couple of questions for staff. You mentioned there was some sidewalk improvements, and that's at the developer's cost on the public properties?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. It's the developer that must pay for install that.
Right. And the bus stop, you also mentioned some improvements to meet the current guidelines. Does that include a covered shelter?
Through your worship, that I don't have the designs in front of me. I'm not sure if that's been sorted out with under the works and services agreement, but it would need to meet the BC Transit guidelines. I believe that would be a requirement, but I would leave that to Mr. Black if he is in attendance. So.
Yeah, I think it's an important aspect, and I'm wondering if it's something that can be addressed to the works and services, or if it would, if we have muscle that we can put behind that. So maybe Mr. Black has a comment.
Any comment, Mr. Black?
Thank you, Worship. At this time, I don't have any comments regarding the installation of a bus stop. We are currently trying to establish what our city bus stops will look like in the future, whether they're the simple standard downtown Vancouver BC Transit shelter, or whether we want to develop a Revelstoke cool cool bus stop. I do have some ideas that are going forward, but I need to develop some standard drawings, take it to the city public, the council for adoption, and then perhaps I can encourage the developer to install that initial structure for the future of our city.
Follow up, Councilor Palmer?
Yes, then another question to Ms. Hartling. On the, you mentioned in your report, our movement to a more cycle-friendly community, and I think that points to the importance of things like the multi-use paths on 4th and other more progressive alternate transportation modes. Is the developer required to make any contributions? I think the answer is no, but is there any contributions, say, for example, on 4th Street for the cycling infrastructure on public property anywhere at all, or is that silent?
Through your worship, they would be paying development cost charges with the development, and we've required the frontage improvements that abut their property. But for off-site, or sorry, for on-street improvements, no, that would be how we've presented it to council through grants and whatnot. They're not applying for also paying for parking stalls, as those are also very dated regulations that the city has that we are looking at updating. So it is whatever is abutting their property.
Thank you. And then my final question, Mayor Souls, is on on-site facilities for alternate transportation, whether that be bikes, bicycles, or other modes of transportation. Is there any additional requirements for the applicant beyond what has previously been for creating facilities for on-site? Is there anything at all? I suspect not, but I'm curious.
Ms. Hartling, any storage or anything for bicycles or alternate transportation?
There's storage within the garage unit. There's no proposed outside bike parking.
Okay, thank you. So Mayor Souls, I'd just like to make a sort of general comment. I am very much in favor. I think everybody knows I'm in favor of increasing these opportunity for housing. I think Revelstoke has been a leader in the province as far as housing solutions. I think we're far more progressive than the province, and I continue to have that statement that I'm concerned about the top-down approach from the province of forcing us to do stuff that may or may not work for our community. However, in general, I'm definitely in favor of that. I'm definitely in favor of creating opportunities to reduce our need for traditional vehicle traffic, cars and trucks. Very much supportive of, and have supported in the past other variances in the past for reducing the requirement of parking. And I'm glad to hear that sort of dialogue. At the same time, I think there's some legitimate concerns as we go ahead on projects like this, a reduction. Yes, there's two units, two parking spaces for the other units, and that should be ample. But I think we all know that most garages end up being storage places, not places where cars are stored. So it creates some concern with me, and I think there's some legitimate concerns. And then, has the city, I'm not asking for an answer to this question, but has the city considered, okay, when things don't go as planned and there's problems with parking on the street, notwithstanding we have bylaws and signs that are required, but we have infractions all over the city of parking infractions that are impacting communities, including illegal rentals in the form of RVs on city property that we don't enforce. So how are we going to deal with those problems if all the fears of the residents actually come to fruition? So I'm just sort of balancing some of those concerns. I look forward to how the planning department, they're doing so many things. It's really amazing how much we've been doing, but I'm looking forward to more solutions, including things like car share requirements at certain trigger and how charging stations and these kind of things. I think there's some really unique made in Revelstoke opportunities to address some of the concerns as we evolve as a community. Those are my comments. Appreciate the report and the work staff's done on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Terry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I've got a couple questions, one for Councillor Palmer, but just for clarification, I've been looking at a lot of townhome developments. Through the chair to staff, this is a strata development? Within a strata development, is the city responsible for parking and ticketing parking? Inside the development?
No, not inside the development. If it's on public right of way, then it would fall to the responsibility of Mr. Gibson, his team.
Okay. Just kind of relaying some of my thinking here then. So if it turns out that a lot of people moved in here with too many vehicles for the suites and they end up parking on the road, there is an argument to be made about this being a cash cow for our bylaw officers then. Something to think about. I have a question through the chair to Councillor Palmer. With your line of questioning there, it sounded like you were revisiting was it CAC contributions, community amendment contributions? Was there an appetite there? Or were you just asking questions about previous conversations?
Yeah, through the chair. More in a sort of general sense, as we transition to reduction of cars and alternate modes of transportation, how do we create overall, with developments in the city, better infrastructure to address that so that those needs are met, and so that we have an ideology of going down there in the province, down that path, and the province is jumping on board, but are we creating problems that we maybe could have foresaw by requiring more requirements on developers to make sure that, because they're getting a benefit here, a significant benefit of value that they could have contributed in other ways. And so whether that's public amenities and the restrictions around that, or new requirements on developments as we go ahead that aren't top down from the province. So it's sort of more of a broad question. And just a comment on your comment about the cash cow. There's no cash cow for bylaw enforcement. It will always cost the tax dollars far more than anything we'll ever collect.
I do know and agree. I think I got the state potential conflict here. If the conversation goes towards car shares in the area, I'll probably have to leave the room as I'm in the process of opening one in town.
But I don't
It
think
hasn't
we need to
happened yet.
discuss that. I mean, what we can discuss though is, the number of cars on your property and the number of cars on my property and the number of times I see Mr. Gibbs' staff circle our blocks. Little concerned about that. We'll leave it at that.
So Mayor Souls, just in reply, so this is in general, I'm certainly not talking about car share specific, and if anything, it's in a very general way. So this is not a conversation about car share. It's about looking after our alternate transportation modes, which is a whole host in the discussion. So I'm more flagging it, and partially in respect to, well, actually largely in respect to the community that has spoken out and said, we've got some serious concerns. And I think those concerns are very legitimate, and probably outside of this discussion, we'll get to a vote on this. Outside this discussion, we'll move on, and hopefully we have that dialogue in the future. Thank you.
Yep, appreciate that. Any other comments from council before I call the vote? Saying none? Councilor Lynn.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just want to make a quick comment about parking again, to go back to that. As we move forward into the future, where there's been discussion for anyone watching about looking at options for parking. Enforcement bylaw enforcement has always been less than 10% of cost recovery, so it's expensive. There are options available out there now, especially enabled by technology, such as having a sticker on your neighborhood, such as having requirements to pay for those things, such as enhanced enforcement. One of the things that I'm not supportive of is people breaking the law with parking. You gotta follow the law. So I was concerned about that in other instances where they're just, park in front of the fire hydrant or parking randomly. You have to follow the law in your parking. So I think we can find ways to moving forward to enforce that. The problem in the past is that, or the reason it is the way it is number one, tow truck companies don't want to tow people. They haven't wanted to tow people traditionally because it just is a headache, and you can make more money doing other things like working out on the highway for that. Number two, there has been a traditional reluctance to drop the hammer on parking. And number three is capacity and staffing issues. And I think as we grow and have more growing pains, there are policy options and tools available to us. And also, again, skating to where the provincial government is going with this. And there is also an effort to, for example, build a bike lane down 4th Street and have more people on the things, improve public transit infrastructure. We are going in this direction, and hopefully we can find tools to manage concerns as they arise.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, no other comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Going to go on to announcements from the mayor. We are now at 6:31 for this. I just want to thank everyone for coming out for Remembrance Day. Thank you to councillors that were able to make it out and join me. Appreciate that. Thanks go to our staff who did some upgrades to our cenotaph this year. Definitely a new fence around the cenotaph, put in new sidewalks, some grass, some plantings, just to really appreciate that. And then a thanks go to Legion Branch 46 for their donation to help with those upgrades. So appreciate that. And then I know we've got a new staff member, our communications coordinator. She's not online now. She decided at 4:30 she'd had enough of us.
She's left already?
After her first day, she's going like, oh, no. Anyway, special welcome to Francesca Williams. Great to have her in City Hall. And welcome, Francesca. We look forward to working with you as time goes on. All right, we're gonna go on to item 8A, recommendations from Committee of the Whole Housing Solutions Project. Any presentation on that, Ms. Rousseau, or are you okay with us just putting the motion on the table?
No presentation, Your Worship.
All right. Someone want to make this motion for me, Councillor Devlin?
I'll move that the Housing Solutions Project Management Plan be endorsed.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor Lusso. Any further discussion on that motion? Councillor Orlando?
We are skimming over this because it's been a long meeting already. This is a big deal. I'm super excited about this project. Please, this is not a small thing. Anyone paying attention and interested in housing, have a read through this and see what we're doing here. Exciting stuff.
Great, appreciate that. And I really want to say to Ms. Russo, thank you so much for the work that you put in on this. And sometimes I look over and I see your door closed and a sign up saying you're working on it, bugger off, something to that effect. Anyway, I appreciate what you're doing and the work that you're doing with other staff to get this to that. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 9A, bylaws, fees and charges. Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, I need a little practice here. I move that fees and charges amendment bylaw be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on fees and charges? Councillor Orlando.
Any changes since we last saw it?
No.
No, okay.
Yes?
Sorry, yes, through your worship to Councillor Orlando, there was one slight change. The memorial tables was increased because Ms. Donato got a quote back.
Okay,
So it wasn't that significant. I believe now it's $3,200.
okay, thank you.
Good. All right. Seeing no other comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to 9B, utility rate amendment bylaw. Someone want to put that on, Councillor Cherry?
I move that utility rate amendment bylaw number 2372 be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to staff reports, 11A, change of street names. So this is where we're bending the names a little bit here.
As it gets.
Couldn't pass it up. Councillor Orlando.
Oh, do you need someone to put it on hold?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, 11A, I move that the eastern portion of Bend Road be renamed as Bend Frontage Road and that Frontage Road be renamed as Bend Frontage Road and that the interior portion of Bend Road be renamed as Big Bend Road. And note that's Bend with a D, not Big Ben, for anyone taking notes. That's a bad joke.
Perfect. All right, seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lucero. Any discussion on changing the names? Councillor Orlando and Councillor Devlin.
Just a quick report. This is about making all these roads make sense, so it makes more sense as development's happening in the area. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Devlin.
Just as always, I would like to apologize to any pizza delivery men. Again, we do this every once in a while, and I'm sorry, it makes your job harder. Otherwise, I'm all for it.
No other comments, Councillor Cherry?
I have a question that I don't expect anybody to know the answer to, through the chair to anybody who I know. How long does this take for the pizza guys, obviously, Google Maps or Apple Maps or any of those sort of softwares to pick up and change? How long?
Go ahead, Mr. Simon. I think they come through once a year, don't they?
Through your worship, I believe so. Staff don't have an in, unfortunately, with Google, but that said, what we do is, once this is done and endorsed by council, we do a formal referral to agencies like Canada Post, BC Assessment, a whole list of people, and then my assumption would be, and it's not safe to assume, but that once all that's done, then you would have secondary markets like Google picking up on it and ultimately making those changes.
Okay, I appreciate that. I thought it's new for me, so I don't know the end. That's why I asked.
Councilor Lennon.
I would note that the good folks at Google did not respond to my note that they are spelling Mackenzie Avenue wrong and have been for decades now.
Forever, yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was me.
No capital K.
Through your worship, though, if council does have any concerns, you feel free to email them to staff, because we did actually have one successful scenario where a telephone number was listed incorrectly on Google, and they did update it. So.
All right, seeing no other comments, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 11B, request for EOF funds to support project initiatives in the CSRD. So Ms. Braun, any presentation or comments before we move forward?
No presentation, Your Worship.
Okay, someone want to put this motion on the table for me, Councilor Cherry?
I move that recommendations be made to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board to allocate $200,000 to the Illecillewaet Greenbelt Society to maintain and expand the Winter Trail Grooming Program.
Second for the motion, Councilor Lusal. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 11B2. Councilor Lucia, you want to put that one on?
Sure. I move that a recommendation be made to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board to allocate $30,000 to the Revelstoke Nordic Ski Club for the purchase of equipment to support multi-season trail maintenance.
Second for the motion, please, Councilor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number 3, Councilor Cherry.
I move that a recommendation be made to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board to allocate $100,000 to the shuttle service for the 2024-25.
All right, second for that motion, Councilor Devlin. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to item 11C, RMI funding allocations. So someone want to put that motion on the table for me?
I think we have a presentation.
You have a presentation, Ms. Braun, on that?
No presentation, Your Worship.
Okay. So it's up to you guys. Councilor Devlin.
I move that RMI funding of $285,761 be reallocated for city capital projects in the following project categories. A, wayfinding, $35,922 increase to cover cost overruns. B, water access, remove 5 mile upgrades from deliverables, $200,000 for wastewater WLP. I'm not gonna try-
Williamson Lake Park.
That's the one, thank you. This is where you're good at this. C, visitor experience arrivals, $57,000 to increase to cover Woodenhead Park washroom construction and Grizzly Plaza upgrades, matching funds. And D, city park upgrades, $192,839 increase to cover costs to construct pump track.
Seconder for the motion, Councilor Lusal. Any discussion on this motion? Councilor Cherry.
I just have a question, Your Worship, through the staff. Has there been any new grant opportunities that we've either successfully gotten or that we are currently applying for these?
Through your worship, to Councillor Cherry, not relating to these infrastructure projects. We have been able to apply, as you know, for Reddit funds previously that staff worked on, and we'll be working with Ms. Donato to look for other grant sources for the pump track. But this would allow us to cover those necessary improvements to city capital projects and to set aside funds for the pump track completion.
Awesome, I do appreciate that. I am in support of this. I would just like to recommend that we continue to apply for grants available that would match these projects.
All right, thank you. Any further comments on the motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried, thank you. Correspondence, so none there. Communication, Minister of Housing, so you see a letter that I've received from Minister Kahlon regarding Bill 44, which we discussed just briefly earlier with some of the changes that are coming down. Again, as we know, staff are looking into what really the devil in the details as to what's going to happen. We don't know exactly what's going to go forward, and provincial government made all kinds of things in the last 3 weeks going to be mandatory, but I think Mr. Simon's pretty much on top of what's going to come down, and at this point in time, it's pretty scattered, right?
That, your worship to all of council, this is the largest overhaul of provincial legislation that I've ever experienced, and it's probably the biggest legislative shift in BC over the last 50 years. So very substantial changes, will require a lot of staff work, and staff look forward to talking with council more about this.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Social Development Committee minutes, Council Lusa, September 27th and then October 25th. Any comments?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. So we went through the heat plan that Taha has put together. There was talk of getting a regional group together so we can talk about emergency preparedness when it comes to external communities and how that affects Revelstoke. Only other thing I'll touch on is the food bank. So we have had to change our distribution days and hours due to funding. So we're down to 2 distribution days, Tuesday afternoons and Thursday mornings. I just have some stats. So we're usually serving 150 people per food bank day, and today we served over 215 people. So we continue to see the need for the food bank rise. We are still looking to figure out how we're going to fund the need for this program here in town.
Thank you for that.
Can you, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned funding changes. What's going on?
CBT has had the biggest changes. So a lot of their grants can no longer go towards wages. So we have money to run programs. We just don't have money to pay people to run these programs. And then, yeah, as we look around, we see increased food prices and people's wants to kind of hold on to their money, feeling a recession coming. So we've seen a decrease in donations as well across the board.
Any plans going forward?
We are doing a big holiday fundraising campaign. I think we're going to get a big thermometer on the side of the building that we can fill up, and we might do top 10 people who donate, get their face somewhere, newspaper article, something like that, just to kind of draw the bigger donations out. Yeah, we're kind of developing that donation plan as we move forward.
That's not a hindrance?
Sorry?
That's not a hindrance?
Spencer's face.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Or
Sorry for not going through the chair on those questions.
Oh, no, it's not a problem. That's
yeah, or you can donate more to bump somebody off that top 10 list.
Oh,
So
there we go.
that's more the encouragement there.
All right. Councilor Orlando, Revelstoke and Area Economic Development Commission.
Sure, yeah, just to speak really quickly to that. I just wanted to, jump back a couple items regarding 13A, all the announcements the provincial government has made. I just want to thank Mr. Simon for providing updates. As community members may know, we're midstream or fairly well along in our zoning bylaw, which is a very important document to set the level playing field for everyone and deal with all the change. So just we're all aware of these provincial announcements the government is making. It does require some homework and thinking about how to proceed and getting up to speed, but we are paying attention. I just want to thank staff for helping keep council in the loop with these changes. And speaking to Revelstoke and Area Economic Development, this is from an October 11 meeting. We're working on destination management plan. Those have been ongoing at several meetings. So this is a plan to manage Revelstoke as a tourism destination, and we're well along in that and having multiple meetings and stakeholder meetings. Great presentation from Mr. Toma on Indigenous relations, and we did, I don't know if it was at this meeting, but the subsequent meeting talked about childcare initiatives and working, and I remember I've already updated council on that one. So yeah, thank you.
Good. All right, moving on to public infrastructure, Council Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Souls. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So with the Public Infrastructure Committee, two themes I'd just like to highlight. It's on policy work. So on the snow removal, as a result of just some of the hiccups last year with snow removal and some of the communications, staff are working behind the scenes on looking at updating our policy to make sure that it addresses concerns around liability to the city. And then more from a council perspective, we've had some discussion on service levels, so that directly relates to policy. So we will be having more discussion at the committee level, and certainly welcome other councillors to join us. But as to expectations of service levels, they'll remain the same for the upcoming winter season, because that's what's going to be in our budget. But possibly looking at some adjustments, or at least the discussion of policy levels going into the next winter season 25-26. And then the other was on water restrictions. Again, this is more bylaw issues on water restrictions. And so we had some good discussion as to whether we need to modernize, and I think the consensus is we do need to modernize our water bylaws as far as use, and look at what are effective water restriction requirements. And also the bigger topic that is important but is emerging to become more and more important is on water metering. So council can anticipate some recommendations coming from the committee in the upcoming months. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Councillor Palmer. Heritage Advisory, looks like there wasn't any councillor at that. Do you want to speak to that at all?
I'd love to make an attempt at it. Your worship, I was not here. I was at UBCM with the majority of other councillors and yourself and staff. So this is about the only update I've got. The Heritage Management Plan marches on. They are still working on it, and they extended feedback, I believe, from committee members on changes.
Good. That's it. Mr. Simon's nodding his head.
Yeah, that looks like it. So I was reading through it on the fly there, Your Worship. Everything else seems very site-specific and lengthy. I encourage anybody interested to take a read. Maybe I should update myself as well.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you. Tourism Initiatives Committee, Councillor Orlando.
Yes, Tourism Initiatives Committee, lots of things going on. Pump tracks, disc golf course is nearing completion, we heard at the committee meeting. Pump tracks in the planning stages. One thing I really wanted to highlight pull out of this, and again, we're moving pretty quickly here because of a long meeting, is the dog park project, which is within the planning for over in the Bridge Creek property. We heard at the meeting of October 19th that one of the holdups is we need an advocacy group to form a nonprofit society and raise some funds to help offset costs. Get some of those grants. Is not a lot that we need, but it was just sort of the way we operate. So any dog park advocates want to get together, happy to talk to any staff member, talk to me, talk to the parks director. It's really not that hard to do. There's lots of available funding. I know over the years I've met a couple times with advocates, but at the current stage there's not a group working towards it, but we can get it done pretty quick if anyone's interested. So
okay, appreciate that. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you through to Councillor Orlando. I believe there is a nonprofit organization, the McPherson Dog Park Society, that was more active a couple of years ago. I believe they do have a Facebook page. It may not be active, but I can dig up the contacts, and I think they actually may have some minimal funds, possibly.
Ms. Braun, do you have a comment?
Just to say that I think Director Donato had been in discussions with them, but was awaiting some confirmation that they were available to work with her on this project. So we are hoping that they will find some capacity to help us with this.
Nice.
Okay, Councillor Chair.
Just so everyone's aware, I believe the person that started that group is no longer in town. I don't know if anybody's taken it over, but they haven't been active in for a year.
Okay.
On socials.
Yeah, appreciate that. Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Orlando?
Your Worship, RMI update, again, destination management plan discussion, happening a lot of meetings, and yeah, good meeting.
Good, appreciate it. Ms. Russo, any questions from the press?
No questions from the press, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. I'd like to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1 A and I of the community charter. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Devlin, Councillor Luceau, all in favor? Motion is carried. We will take a couple minute break and come back and get the meeting done. Thank you.
Appreciate you asking some questions like this.